from the day, apropos of Chris's topic, is from Jennings, and it says, profit in business comes from repeat customers. Customers who boast about your product or service and who bring friends with them. Anybody have raving fans? Tell people about you? When's the last time that happened?
Okay.
Alex, that happened with you and me.
Did?
Yeah, that's how I met Alex. Was through another member. Anyway, so here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to do some introductions so everybody knows who are the folks in the room. I really appreciate one of the things about my members is you use our great speakers as a point of opportunity for them to come share that learning with you. Chris Jennings is going to be with us for the morning, and are you going to stay for lunch?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. And in the afternoon, we have our regular group administration, significant events. We have a lot of issue updates from last time, and Jim Smith is doing his business review and more issues today. Okay, so let me tell you about Chris Jennings. Many of you will remember Chris. He's the man who introduced us to a structured sales management system. 5.5 years ago, we were out at Ed Davis's place. He's the owner of the Sandler Sales Institute in California. He's an award-winning Vistage speaker. He's a 10-year Vistage member. And Chris was first introduced to the Sandler system in 1994. And he dug into it. And after extensive investigation, he satisfied himself that that approach was the most effective method available for increasing one's sales potential. And then he opened the office in California. He's worked with over 2,000 companies over the last 25 years, developing everything from communication skills, increasing sales revenue, developing sales leaders across many different industries. And his lieutenant, who we all refer to as Tom P, because I have a hard time. Say your last name.
My last name is Patriga.
Patriga, Tom Patriga. Okay, so lots of people in this room have met with Tom, and he's worked with a number of the folks here and been really helpful. He works with them for a few years, and then they graduate. Any of you who have gone and sat in on the system at Chris's place, at Chris Jones's place, that's an example of what Tom put in. Okay, so Chris has a unique ability to break down business development principles into easy to implement practical suggestions that positively impact our businesses. I'm very pleased that Chris has added to his repertoire today's topic, client retention. Very timely, especially given the success in this room of people adding customers. We want to keep it. Okay, so let's take a moment for introduction. So now you have an introduction. You know who Chris is. People have met you before, but tell them what you do. Because you came last fall, didn't you? Sat in. Okay, this is Ray Goins.
This is Ray Goins with the Jack Ulster Company, and primary responsibilities is to really help fill gaps in terms of technology and tools and training and help try to propel us forward in those areas.
Cool, well said. Mark.
Good morning, I'm Mark Holly. I'm also with the Jack Ulster Company, and I'm the used sales manager for our company.
Used trailers.
Used.
Used. Okay. Everybody knows Jonathan. Tell him again what you do for Terry.
I am director of admissions, so front-end management, patients influx, calls.
And kind of a lot of little extra things there.
Yeah,
Right.
depending on the day.
Depending on the day, that's right. So Michael, I don't know that anybody, have you ever been to visit
I have
before? Okay, tell them what you do.
Michael Stovall, I work for Universal Weather and Aviation, and I'm in charge of all of our international sales teams, everything but North America.
Okay. Daniel, welcome. Daniel's a new player in Ash's orbit.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Daniel Wang, the new Sales and Marketing Director at Ashford Communities.
Ta-da! Rashid.
Hi, this is Rajiv. I also work for Ashford Communities. I'm a regional supervisor.
And this is Alex. I sent you information about Alex, so be sure to meet him today. You want to say something about what you do?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Alex Benetti, founder and CEO of Family Tree Home Care, a few other businesses in the home health care space.
Yeah, a few other businesses. Scott, what do you do?
So I work for American Omni Trading. My name's Scott Bishop, and I'm the national sales manager. So fairly new to Houston, and just
Oh, yeah,
get,
right.
getting acquainted.
And how much of your life have you been in the tire business?
Really, my whole life.
Oh,
So
okay.
just a few
He's our
years.
tire
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're the trailers and he's the tires.
Use tires.
Sarah,
Yes, hi, Sarah Jesus. I work at Sevens Brands. I lead the Strategic Account Services Department, and my team is responsible for our client-facing relationships. So,
okay. So Tom, now that you've pronounced your name, tell me what you do and where you do it.
So I've been with Chris Jennings for 7 years at this point in time. Prior to that time, I was a VP of sales for a variety of Silicon Valley software companies. And the connection Chris and I have is I hired Chris to start training my salespeople. That started out in the late 90s. So I've been around this for quite some time. I appreciate the opportunity to have worked with probably about a half a dozen of you in this room at this point in time. Thanks to Fred doing the connections for me. So I appreciate that, Fred.
Perfect, great. Okay, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, quick switch. Thanks, Fred, and glad to be here in Houston. Nice to meet you guys. For anybody new, and welcome to the time change as well. So, and today the topic's around client retention and really holding on to and growing and expanding the client relationships that we have. When I was here last, we spent some time working on the sales and sales management system side of the business, and as I've kind of been studying companies for a number of years, there's really two ways to grow revenue. Number one is to find new clients, bring them in, and the second way is to do more with the clients that we have and really be able to focus on the more profitable clients that we have, which is a really nice way to grow margins, which is really the focus of this program. I'll tell you kind of a brief story. A few years back, for years and years, like Fred talked about, for last few decades, we've been working, Tom and I and the rest of our team, on developing sales and sales leadership principles. And we really started to take a closer look at what happens once you get a client, and what's our success rate of holding on to clients, and do those relationships always pan out to be the way that we would hope they would have been, and things like that. And one of the things that I found was that, and I saw an interesting statistic, that increasing your client retention rate by as little as 5% can increase your bottom line net revenue by as much as 85 to 90%. It's really a dramatic effect of holding on to clients year over year over a period of time. You can see where the math really leans in your favor. And so we started creating some new material, and about a year or two into it, I was doing a number of interviews, and I came across a gentleman his name is Mike. Mike's a Vistage member, has run a company for the last couple of decades, and so he and I were comparing notes on what he's been doing, and here's what he eventually developed, and where we kind of synced up. Mike runs his company on a series of KPIs that everybody inside of his organization has 3 very specific KPIs that they're responsible for. And he has grown year over year about 10 to 20 points per year. The interesting thing is not just the revenue growth. The other interesting thing is every 6 months he initiates a price increase of about 3%. And so if you I'll just repeat that. Every 6 months he initiates a price increase of about 3%. And what's happened is he's grown this company. I think they're in the 50 million-ish range right now, as you'd imagine, very healthy bottom line. And he's done all this with only 2 salespeople, right? Sometimes he's had as many as 3, but it's typically been just 2 salespeople. And the reason he's been able to do this so successfully is because the clients that these clients he's held on to year over year. And I'm going to share some of the principles that Mike's executing in his organization, some of the things that we've studied to help you kind of be able to execute that. Now, my favorite part of that story about Mike is he does all this and he works 3 days a week. He comes into the office Tuesday through Thursday because he wants to. Right? He takes about 8 to 12 weeks per year of vacation, and the reason he is able to do that is his company functions extraordinarily well in his absence because everybody in the organization is really clear on what their role is and how they interact with their clients. And that's what I'm going to share with you this morning. So, sound okay? Great. So, in front of you, I believe we all got folders or handouts of some sort, depending on.
Some of you have copies of the handouts.
Yeah. So.
Members, you all have a blue folder, right? But some people, because we didn't have enough folders, have copies. Again, you have copies. Okay. It's the contents of the folder.
Yep. So, for those of you, if you have a folder, the only thing on the left-hand side I'm going to share with you initially is just our team roster. So you see my friend over here, Tom Triga. I even know how to pronounce his last name. It tells you we know each other fairly well. We mostly meet in random cities, even though we both live in California. We mostly meet in places like Houston and elsewhere. And these are the smart, hardworking folks that carry out the majority of our assignments. I'll probably reference a couple of stories of things that they've been doing along the way with various clients to kind of illustrate a couple of points. Everything else I'm going to work off of is on these program outline that you have on the right-hand side. There's a handy packet there if you'd like to grab that, and I will fill that out. I love your chair. How long ago? When did you get this chair?
Johnny, when did you make that chair?
A year?
Good job, Johnny. Yeah, way to go. I love the chair. I said,
It's a surprise.
every chair in the country is going to be envious of Fred's chair.
Oh, we should post it.
Yeah, you should totally post it. Absolutely. Right. There's not a chair in the land who won't be thinking, why don't my members make me a chair?
Very
As Fred mentioned, I'm a Vistage member as well, and probably been in Vistage, I think, 10 or 12 years. I can't remember the exact join date. And I think Alex here checking us out for the first time. It's been a tremendous experience. And it's funny how it happens slowly over time as you watch your fellow Vistage members and their skills grow and their ability to handle situations just a little bit more easily and becoming better leaders. And it's really a phenomenal program. And I'll share a couple of insights along the way. On this outline that you got in front of you, so I'm gonna take it in sections. First off, I'm just gonna give you 10 systems that I believe belong in every business. And I can assure you, if you install these 10 systems, not only will you see revenue grow, but you will see the margins grow as well. And then I'm gonna work through a system to give you some details on how to onboard new clients. And really, in my opinion, the best way to have a great relationship with somebody over an extended period of time is to have the right initial ground rules laid out in the very beginning. And if both parties understand all of those ground rules, we are best set up to have a really productive, long-term, mutually beneficial relationship. We don't set out great ground rules in the beginning. Some things go well, some things not so well. And most of the problems that we've ever encountered before, we've run into just about every problem already. There's not too many unique problems that come up, so I'm going to give you some insights on how to sort of deal with those in advance. And then the third section I'll work on. I promise I'll take at least one break. And it's woven somewhere in there. So, and then I'm going to spend some time on talking about how do we create loyal, raving fans that are so excited about the kind of business that we're doing together that they really become your sales team. Like my friend Mike that I shared with you, to be able to efficiently keep your cost of sales down and keep your sales team tight, but really to be able to get your clients to be introducing you to new clients on a regular basis, that really is kind of the home run of what we're looking for. I'll do a quick exercise on implementation, and then I'll cover anything that you want to talk about between now and, when are we, 11:30? Is that the?
11:30.
11:30. Yeah, 11:30, 11:45.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, whatever is on your mind that you want to cover, I'm game, right? So, sound okay?
Good.
Okay, great. So, if you'll flip to page 2, I'm going to jump into sort of staging area. I'm going to jump into the 10 systems to really help you retain your clients. You'll notice down the right-hand side there's a self-rating scale. That self-rating scale is for you to use to take a snapshot of a moment in time. Where are you today? Scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, I had no idea I should be paying attention to this. 10 being, not only are we doing this, we're doing this so phenomenally well. Chris, this would be a good time for you to sit down, take a break. I'm going to cover this section for you. And it just sort of marks a moment in time of wherever you're at, and you can use it as a baseline going forward. Okay? So, jumping in, I'm going to cover concept number 1, which is something we refer to as pay time for special teams. Pay time for special teams. And this concept around pay time for special teams, pay time you may have heard before, we define as time on the phone or in front of a prospect or a client. Right? Time on the phone or in front of a prospect or a client. You have a sales team, that's what you're paying your sales team to do. I'm going to ask you, what would you imagine? Sorry, I know you're trying to chase me. It's like, just get something closer. So what would you imagine the average salesperson gets, full-time salesperson, in pay time per day? How many hours a day? What would you guess?
Yeah.
Half their day, so 4 hours. Okay, anybody else?
Less.
Less?
An hour and a half.
Hour and a half, okay. Hour and a half, 4 hours. Anybody outside of that? No, that covers the room. So we've been studying the numbers for a long time. The average salesperson runs around 45 minutes to an hour per day. Usually people find that to be sort of a low number, lower than they expected. It's not what I thought I was paying for, and that tends to be the reality. And again, people get distracted. They get bogged down in detail work. I'm going to say for a lot of companies, there's not a focus on what it should be, and primarily the biggest issue is email. Right? Most people are spending their primary method of communications these days is email, and they're relying on that as almost the entirety of the kind of relationship that they're having, and that's really where the issue is. The target for salespeople is 4 hours per day. Okay, and what I've found is anytime you get a salesperson to get 4 hours a day of pay time, not only do they achieve their goals, they absolutely blow their goals completely out of the water, right? So if you're really wanting to control overall input, new sales, you want to control pay time. The other group that I want to focus in on, though, is the special teams players, right? Special teams players are all these smart, hardworking folks inside of your organization that are not labeled sales or business development. However, they have pay time, live dialogue with your prospects and your clients. And so that might be your project management team. It's a field superintendent. It's a technical resource. It's a case manager, right? There's a number, a driver, an installer. There's a customer service person. There's so many roles typically in our organization where we have pay time, we have live interaction with our prospects and clients, yet they're not labeled sales. Fair? Right? And I'm going to guess that most company leaders at some company-wide event have in front of their organization said something like, hey, everybody in our company is in sales, right? And anybody found themselves saying something like that? Yeah. And most of your people will politely nod their head during that time, and then as they walk away, saying to themselves or their colleagues, no, I'm not, that's so-and-so's job, right? And because for a couple of reasons. First of all, so when you say the word sales, what industry do most people go to? Cars. What kind of cars?
Used cars.
Used cars. Right? Anybody sell used cars here? No? Normally, 99.9% of the time, if I'm in the Vistage community, nobody's selling used cars. There's only been 2 people that I've ever met in the entire time that I've actually been at Vistage that actually had something to do with used cars. One of them was Sam Reese, by the way, so which I found interesting. So, and usually what happens is that your people think to themselves, well, I'm not a used car salesperson, because they don't really know what it even means to be in sales necessarily. And so there's a little bit of a conflict. In fact, anybody have conflict between sales and ops? Like, who said if we could hit that deadline? That's sort of hard. We charge extra for that. So here's kind of how I look at it. I very much look at the sales effort as a team sport, right? I feel like excellent salespeople are quarterbacks, right? Their job is to understand the entirety of the opportunity, see the whole field and everything that could happen along the way, and then to best utilize the resources inside their organization, which in my opinion is why I like you to have tight, very small, and efficient sales teams, right? And again, you know, when you can get $50 million revenue with an incredible net profit number and do it all with 2 salespeople, I know something is going right. Like, those are quarterbacks. Just like I go to a professional football team, there are 1 or 2, maybe there's a third backup quarterback, right? And their job is to better understand how to utilize the resources of the team around them, right? Unfortunately, what happens, I don't know if you've seen this, a lot of salespeople get sort of territorial about the account, they're very possessive about the client relationship, nobody could talk to that person but me, and end up, unfortunately, using a lot of their time project management as opposed to project management, case management, as opposed to in actual sales. That's just how they should be utilizing their best. That's the best use of their time. Everybody follow me on that? And the other thing that I find is normally you have a lot more special teams players in your organization than you do salespeople. And on top of it, they're the people that your customers, your clients want to speak to, right? That technical resource, it really matters. So think about yourself. If you're in a, when you have somebody coming over to a salesperson to see you that day at your office, I don't know if you get up as you're getting dressed, super excited, and say, yeah, I got a salesperson calling on me today. I'm looking forward to getting in the office. Does that happen? I didn't think so. Right? However, if you had an important technical resource, you had somebody who's coming to help you fix a problem, you might talk about that as an important moment. And those special teams players inside of your organizations, those are the people that your clients want access to. And unfortunately, a lot of us are hiding them from the customer, not getting them out in front of the customer. Everybody follow me so far on this? So there's a couple of things that I'd like you to do with this concept. Number one, for all your special teams players, you really have to define what is their sales role. What are you actually asking them to do? And then number two, I got to help them probably get over the hurdle and the head trash or the concerns that they might have about executing on those functions. So
if I spilled on Fred's chair, that would be like just a terrible faux pas. So that's not happening. We're not letting that happen today. Can you imagine? I spill an entire cup of coffee on her chair. Even saying that out loud just sounds very scary. Don't let that happen. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a client of ours in the Southern California area, and it's a steel distribution firm. And as you know, so I don't know how many of you buy steel at all, but it's competitive industry. There's lots of companies that distribute steel. And what we did is we were working with the sales team. The sales team was in our ear about how competitive it was, and it's all price driven in the market. And so we're helping them with that. And we decided to do a project with the drivers. So we went to the drivers and we said, hey, every time you make a delivery, I'd like you to find 2 people at the client location and ask them from the short list of questions, right? So what's causing your backlog these days? Do you actually have room to inventory that? Do you guys heat treat that before you send it out? And what we found was the drivers started coming back with all these really sort of interesting, meaty opportunities, right? Because here's the other thing that we found is that if your initial entry into the marketplace is often fairly competitive, yeah? Right? There's you and X number of other people who provide a very similar service. So the initial entry is competitive. But the additional add-on sales that you might bring to the table can be the best sales that you have in your organization. Those are the sales that you really want. So for example, with that heat treating, if you sell a piece of steel, you might get 20 points of margin, maybe 25, maybe 18. But if you heat treat a piece of steel and sell that, all of a sudden you're 45 points of margin, 50 points of margin, and it starts to get really interesting, right? Does that make sense to everybody? So it's those kinds of non-competitive, high-value, high-margin sales that the special teams really needs to be equipped to look out for to really maximize the effort of what you're doing with your outside sales team. You guys are all good so far? Okay. Now, the other thing, though, you got to take into consideration is imagine you're a driver at a steel distribution firm and you showed up to work at 6 in the morning with a list of deliveries for the day. What's your goal for the day? Get the deliveries done and
Don't get hurt.
Yeah, don't get hurt. Safety. I appreciate that, Mark. So, and what do you do after you get the deliveries done? Go home. So that's really your goal for the day. Get the deliveries done and go home. And then we come along with our bright ideas, as we often do, especially post-Vistage. No. Hey, what I want you to do is stop and find 2 people at each location and ask them from this list of questions. So you see again why there's a little bit of conflict there, right? So, like I said, I really like to look at sales as a team sport. So what we did there is we, every time the drivers found an opportunity, name went into a hat, we'd gather the entire company once a month. I'd like a monthly gathering talking about what do we have in the pipeline so that the operations side appreciates the work and the effort and the energy that's going into finding opportunities, that they're alerted as to things that we're looking at. And when the special teams players are helping find things, their name goes into a hat, we start picking names and we spin a wheel, tick, 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 $50 to Subway, tick, 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 a couple tickets to the Rockets games, tick, 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 maybe a Friday off with pay, something meaningful to really reward the efforts of those special teams groups and get this to be a collaborative team approach. Right? And the other thing I find too, because some of us have some sales folks that have been in a territory for a long time, think that the whole world revolves around them. It's their clients, not the company's clients. And really the ability to spread it out through the special teams groups really gets the customers attached to the company and the breadth of services that we offer, which is really the most efficient way to go because it frees up your sales team to be engaged in pay time and go find more opportunities, better opportunities. Make sense? You guys good so far? Question, comment?
Could we ask the group if people have examples of what a special team is comprised of in their company?
Sure.
So this really resonates to me because my prior life, a month ago, right, I worked at Direct Energy as their head of paid media for their digital department. So I was spending millions of dollars every month on different things to sort of get eyeballs for our product. And so one of the companies we work really closely with is a Google team, and we had our with our amount of spend, we were afforded our own account reps. And they were great, they're basically account executives, salespeople, always telling about like the newest products out. Yeah. But one thing they did that I really, really liked is they would constantly fly down from Mountain View and bring like their experts, right? So it would be like the guy that does the analytics stuff, the guy that does the display stuff. And they weren't sales or account executives, they were just, the doers within the department. But then we would talk to them and basically, they would link us to these different people. And then next thing we know, we would be invested in all these new sort of promotions and products that had nothing to do with our core business. It was just ancillary stuff. But because they could explain it, because they had that expertise, we felt more comfortable going that direction.
Yeah.
This really resonated with me.
Cool. Excellent.
Very cool.
Anybody else? No?
Answer that. Anybody else have these special teams that work together with sales? You do?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim?
We've got outside people.
Yeah.
We've got 3,500 clients all over the country.
Yeah.
And so we've got people in territories. We have inside people as well that hook up with them, and we've got hybrid people that do both roles.
Yeah.
In and out, and customer service folks, and then we've got consultant people that call and talk and solve problems for our customers. So those are real front-facing people all the time.
Yeah.
I consider them. They don't like to be called sales. They're the
pharmacists. I
gotcha. They're pharmacists. But over the years, because of Sandler and other things, it has helped us with that build, the idea that you are really, really important to the outcomes of what's going on. And
it's huge.
We've transformed sales as equal to service.
Yeah, having those consultants that you bring in. I was in Shelton, Connecticut last week. And I was touring a chemical company, and I met Magda, who was in charge of the chemistry department, and she started telling me about this new blue dye that they were selling to some sort of RV manufacturer, and this blue dye, they were selling $200,000 a quarter of little jars of blue dye. And she had helped formulate this stuff. And if you get somebody like Magda, this chemist, in front of one of your customers, kind of like how you shared, their confidence level goes way up, right? That you were the right choice. Okay? Make sense? All right, I'm going to keep going. So, number 2 is about new customer onboarding. And onboarding new customers, new clients is, to me, one of the most critical things that you can do. That when somebody new joins you or starts working with you, they are still in checking it out mode, trying it out mode. I saw a really interesting statistic recently talking about hiring millennials, and said that so when you hire somebody new in your company, so you got to look at your new employee onboarding. This is really going to talk about new client onboarding, but it was an interesting statistic in the millennial market that 70% of all millennials at the end of their first day of a new job go home that night and look for different jobs on the internet. I found that fascinating. Meaning, right, so whatever happened on that first day, right, if it wasn't meaningful enough to them on day one, that seed of doubt was like, maybe I should consider to keep my options open, right? And I thought that was a really telling statistic. And I'm going to ask you too, I wonder what percentage of your new clients at the beginning of the relationship are still 100% sold. Are they more nervous or less nervous since they've made that decision? And usually what I've found is that many of us have worked very hard to improve our internal mechanics and systems and operations about how do we bring somebody on, correct? So we've got strategies and protocols in place. The question I'm asking you is, how well is that communicated to our customer in a way that really makes them feel like they've made the absolute right choice, or are they still feeling tentative in some way, like they should keep their options open? And until we've really done this in a very thoughtful way, I think that business is at risk. And so, in fact, I'm going to take an entire section and devote it to new customer onboarding, because I think it's so critical. And a couple of pieces that I would recommend. Again, I talked about if you have one person trying to over control the account and project manage also, it's almost destined for failure, right? Because sooner or later, the rest of the group has got to come in. So that quarterback idea of the salesperson being the lead representative, and then figuring out how do I start to connect that new customer to our company, what resources do I need to bring in, what likely problems might we have, et cetera, that to me is critical, right? How many of you, I'm just curious, I always like to know this, how many of you have well-defined new customer onboarding programs? Okay, few of you.
You like training?
Mm-hmm.
But not good enough for onboarding clients or tenants or whatever.
Okay.
Not well defined.
Okay, so again, it's an area that I like us to look at, because like I was saying before, to have a long-term, very successful, mutually engaging relationship, it's really important that we talk very openly in the very beginning about what are some of the likely challenges we're going to have, and how to ease the transition to a new facility, because people are often very tentative, right? And they may have hired you on sort of a trial basis. And like I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to spend some considerable time on this after the first break. Make sense? Okay, good. All right, number three. Number three is something where we talk about collecting customer org charts. And I think this is a really critical piece. You've seen, you know what I mean by the org chart. We've got here's what this person does, here's what that person does. How many of us do that as a regular practice? Just curious. Okay, I got one of us maybe. And again, if you're going to get to know somebody new, and if you call on consumers, the family tree serves as the org chart, essentially. And so, but if you're getting to know a new customer, it's really, part of the goal should be for us to become like a part of their team, right? And I think we have accounts like that where they don't look at us like a vendor, they look at us as a part of their team. And we are in a very well coordinated effort. But as long as we are kind of held as a vendor relationship, maybe the entirety of the relationship is through purchasing, we respond to RFPs, something very bureaucratic, there's not really a deep, meaningful relationship, then we're only going to get probably a minimal fraction of what we could get. On average, just curious, how many contacts do you tend to have at your clients? What's normal for you? How many? What's your primary number? One or two?
Ash sales to consumers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So 3 to 5.
No, but we should have more because we have
3.
ongoing. Right.
So I heard 1, 2, 3 to 5.
6 to 10.
6 to 10. That's a good number. So my minimum number. Here's my minimum number. Any account, you should always have at least 3. Okay, you always have to have at least 3 key contacts. All right, if you don't have 3 contacts, your business is completely at risk. Okay, if you only have 1 contact and that 1 contact leaves, then what happens?
You got to start over.
Well, yeah, new person comes in, and what do they want to do?
Different.
Yeah, they want to bring their team in. Now, if I only have 2 contacts, right, one of those people leaves. Now the new person comes in, and that new person still wants to bring in their contacts, and they start convincing that other person, and the new person says, well, the one person who was there before says, this new person, we really need to give them a shot to let them do whatever it is that they thought they should do. But if you have at least 2, and somebody new comes in, that it starts to tell you, look, we're very tight with these guys, unraveling that relationship would be too difficult. And that's what you're trying to build, right? You're trying to get to where you have, so if you think about your very best clients, how many contacts do you have at your best clients? How many people do you know there? Think about that. What's the number?
That we know or work with?
That we know and work with and are connected to at our very best clients. 8, 9, 10, right? Now that, when you have 8, 9, 10 contacts at a client organization, the odds of becoming unseated are minuscule. It would be an incredible, extraordinary event would have to happen, and because normally it's at that point it's too difficult to unravel the relationship, right? You're too invested in one another. So what we like to do is start to get the client org charts, and we start to pair up our CEO to their CEO, right? Our CFO occasionally gets together with their CFO. Our COO is meeting with their COO. Our head of quality is meeting with their head of quality. And I am pairing up and connecting my org chart to their org chart in a very thoughtful, very intentional way. And again, once I do that, it becomes practically impossible to untangle this relationship because we're too invested, there's too much at stake, and it would be too costly to leave. Does everybody follow me on that strategy? And I like it to be very intentional. And the other thing is I want you to know, at your customers, we need to know who's there. This is one of the funny things when we debrief sales calls with customers, and I know I've watched Tom do this a bunch of times, and he'll ask the salesperson, so what's the title of the person that you're calling on? I'm not sure, but it's the decision maker, right? We've heard that so many times. Not exactly sure. I always find this interesting. So you've met with them, you're supposing to help them, you don't even know what their job is. Really, we don't even know their title. We haven't taken time to understand enough of the landscape, of the environment that they work in. And again, really our jobs are to best fit our environment to their environment and try to figure out how do we do that in the most seamless, efficient, least anxiety-provoking way. Everybody follow me on that concept? It's a really easy thing to do. This should be tied into your CRM at some level so that you can start to track this. I've seen clients who will chart this. You could almost chart the number of contacts you have in a company to the amount of revenue that you have per client. And it will almost always correlate. The more contacts that you have there, the more revenue you're going to tend to do with them. Make sense? Questions? Comments? No? Yes, sir.
I mean, I kind of follow your logic with small and medium-sized companies, and we deal with some of those, but we also deal with very large multinational
Sure. Yeah.
What are you looking for numbers there? 30, 40 contacts?
It could easily be that, right? So you could easily have 30 or 40 contacts, and I want to be constantly adding to that. So the other thing you'll see in clients that size is there's constant movement, fair? Right? So people are coming and going. That movement can be a very positive thing if I'm approaching it the right way. And I have a real understanding of who they are. And ideally, I'm following lots of people who worked at this very big company over to maybe that mid-sized client that takes me over there. I'm sure you've had that happen. And I just want to make sure that we have the org chart so I know who the divisional presidents are, et cetera. And I want to be utilizing the resources, yourself included, in a really appropriate sort of way. Okay? Thank you. Other questions, comments? You guys good? Yes, sir.
You may talk about this later, but in a situation where for your customer base you kind of are a vendor, is there a way for you to move out of that space, like as far as that what you're talking about,
Yeah,
partnership?
it's a great question, right? So, so how do we move out of being looked at as a vendor? I hate that term, by the way. As a service provider of any kind, if I ever have a client reference me, turn to me and say, "Oh, our vendor is here," I would just be mortified. Right? So, and however, and usually what I try to talk to sales teams is I always tell sales teams, like, hey, don't let your prospects dehumanize you, right? Because if you're not careful, that'll happen. And we've all been in environments where that can happen. And that's really up to us to set the tone. And I think as we go through some of the processes, you might see a couple of answers on it. So, okay, everybody's good? Number 4. Number 4 is the quarterly business review. Again, another key process every 90 days to take a formal assessment of the health of our relationship. You might do this in families, like some families have family meetings, right? And just kind of take stock of where's everybody at, got lacrosse this year or no lacrosse or whatever we have going on in a family environment. And the same thing should be happening with our client relationships. This is not, let me tell you what this is not. This is not, what else have you got for us? Okay? If that's how you run your quarterly business reviews as a overt sales call, then the odds of your client wanting to do that with you every 90 days are really slim, right? Yes, sir.
We focus on best practices on the quarterlies.
Okay, so give me an idea. What kinds of things you do?
We have one customer that palletizes their product in the plastic resin business at 50 bags per pallet, and there's problems with that.
Okay.
Other customers do 55. So we say, why are you doing 50? I mean, 55. Here's the advantage of 55. Oh, really? We can save this. We can save. We didn't know that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that we're looking for. Taking stock over the last 90 days. How did we measure up versus what you were hoping that could happen? How have we stayed on schedule? Where has schedule gone off track? Great question in a quarterly business review. Who's new to the team? Who's left the team since we were here last? Who else do we need to onboard into our process that's new? That certainly is going to come up. And really getting some sort of, I love the idea of going through best practices, sharing what's been learned, really trying to dig into what their business is about, where's their business going, doing some historical review, doing a current day update, looking into the future, where are they headed. All of these things I think are critical practices. And the other thing I would do is I would start to rotate special teams players into that quarterly business review. I'm sorry, what was your first name again?
Daniel.
Daniel? Right. So, and that's what you saw Google doing. So an analytics person would come in on one quarter, right? And then a different department, my quality manager comes in on a different quarter. An executive person, somebody from the executive team comes in. And again, as I'm doing that at the quarterly business review, so if I have our quality person coming in, I ask their quality person to come in. If I'm coming in as the CEO, I ask their CEO or divisional president to come in. So I'm really trying to pair up and make great utilization out of our special teams groups,
And again, as you're doing this quarter over quarter and really putting yourself up, setting yourself apart, what I've found is the companies who run the most effective QBRs and quarterly business reviews are the ones that hold on to their clients the longest, do the greatest amount of revenue, and really, I don't know if you're doing a lot of quoting right now, and instead of quoting, it becomes just ordering, right? Because if you are constantly being put up to bid against a bunch of other people and treated like you're brand new every single time that you try to go after a piece of business, there's a problem, right? Because if I haven't, by the end of 3 or 4 quarters, gotten to a point where they are so impressed with the way that you work that I don't have to worry about quoting stuff, and I just get to order because I know I will be treated fairly, I think this is a huge thing. I'll give you another topic that I believe belongs in a lot of quarterly business reviews these days is price increases. Right? We are in an inflationary period for the first time in really in decades. There are so many people in business that have never had to, in their entire career, deliver price increases. And I think if we are not paving the way for price increases well in advance, I think that we're already behind in giving people, an advanced look at that and what would be required, or even sometimes how to repackage the business, right? So, so there's so many ways to do that. Because you could, in your example, go up by 10% in volume, and that might require a 3% increase, and they don't even notice it. But it's a huge win for you to get your extra 3 points. So, make sense? How many? Yeah. Question.
I'll tell you what we're attempting to do. We're
Okay.
in the process of it. I wish I could say that we were done, but we're trying to get away from all these broad terms. How's it going? And how did we do? And sorry, Mark, but even best practices is so broad. But to the onboard, there's specific KPIs and customer expectations that are set up from the beginning.
Correct.
And then those reviews are hitting those specific things that were negotiated with the customer. And we're even using our internal EOS system to help drive it.
Yeah. And that's so as you set up each special teams groups, the goal here is to get a specific set of KPIs for them, and then be able to translate that into a specific set of KPIs as it relates to your customer. And quarter over quarter, as you're measuring, there's a specific measurement of some sort where we can demonstrate what we're doing versus what we've been doing, and how do we fine tune that. What happens is you do this quarter over quarter, is you get so far ahead of your competitors, they can't catch you. Right? It becomes impossible for you to lose the business. So if you do 3% price increases every 6 months, that's kind of a non-issue, because there's so many other things that you're covering for them. But it really, there has to be a formality to the process to constantly look at that in a very intentional, thoughtful, and very deliberate way.
Where do you draw the line within your hierarchy of customers?
Okay, great question. Right? So that could vary. You might, and it depends on the size of your business. So maybe it's every customer over $250,000 a year revenue gets a live face-to-face quarterly business review. If they're over $50,000 in revenue, we're at least doing them on video conference, and below that, it may be on the phone. The quarterly business reviews, ideally I'm doing those in person. My fallback to that is a video conference. I'm a fan of Zoom as a video conference tool. I think it's a lot better than all the other ones that I've seen. And if you haven't yet gotten your company comfortable on video meetings, I think you're missing out. If you're still doing conference calls, I'm going to warn you, if conference calls is your primary way of tracking with your clients, it's super dangerous, because I don't like doing conference calls at all anymore. I think they're almost a complete waste of time, because especially if you have multiple people in them, because it is impossible not to do what if you're on a conference call? Check your email. It's impossible. Anybody on I guarantee you, anybody in a conference call is they're doing some, especially if there's more than 2 people from their side, guaranteed they're into their inbox or their phone, and they're distracted. So you've got to get people on video, right? And again, if you capture somebody's attention, this is the other thing too. If your customer is making such a consistent investment in you in that time, they don't really have that time to invest in your competitors. And again, you start to create such separation from the pack that it's really difficult for them, almost impossible for them to catch you. Okay? Is good? All right. Question? No? And number 5. 5 is about updating your customer goals. This can happen in the quarterly business review. However, this could happen in any sort of interaction with the customer at any time. And I would empower everybody in your organization to inquire about what their customer goals are, to be able to add that to the database or your CRM so that we're constantly capturing that information so that we're very in tune with who our customers are. And again, I like your customer to eventually look at you as just part of their team. You're not a vendor, you're not an outsider, you're a part of their team. You have one of their badges, so you know the code to get into the kitchen, so you're a part of the team. The 3 kinds of goals that I like you to look for, up top is going to be strategic, company-wide goals. Right? The strategic company-wide, what are the overarching objectives of your organization? Right? So, and sometimes the overarching objectives of the organization have little to do, it would seem, with the day-to-day interaction that I have, but I want to always know what are those overarching objectives, because I can guarantee you that will rain down in some way. I would like to know what are the department goals that my customer has. And sometimes you'll find that the department goals, sometimes there's direct things that I can do to help that customer in some way, shape, or form. But sometimes I learn about indirect ways that I can help them, right? And so we've probably done, as fellow Vistage members, we've helped each other out with indirect things, and whether it was a vacation spot or an internship for one of our kids. And I find sometimes getting to know people is so important because there's a lot of different ways that you can help them outside of what you invoice them for. Everybody follow me on that? If the only thing you were ever asking them about is stuff that you invoice them for, then that in and of itself will appear self-serving, and that sort of suggests the quality of the relationship. And then the third type of goals that I'm looking for are their personal goals. I'm really interested on what are they looking for career-wise? What are their aspirations after their careers are over? What are they doing with downtime? What is important to them, their family? If it's spring break, are they going with family someplace? There's so many things that are important. Bless you. Oh, sneezing going on here. So, is it in the eggs? Something? Huh? Oh, is it that time of year? Yeah. It's your spring. Yeah. I was in Florida in February, and I couldn't barely breathe. I was like, it's February. It can't be like allergy season. Like, no, Florida, allergy season starts in February. I was like, okay, good to know. So, but really understanding people's career goals can be an excellent way to get to know people. I already talked about the org charts and people's comings and goings. I'll share a quick story of a client of ours. A gentleman in New York, his name's Matthew. Matthew's client was based in Chicago, and they serve clients all over the world. And his client company, and he had 6 people at this one department that were his primary contacts at this company. Well, that company merged with another company, and so all 6 people's jobs were eliminated, and he lost that client in an instant. So what Matthew decided to do is he said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to fly to Chicago, I'm going to host a dinner, and all of us, those 6 people and Matthew all got together, and we're going to talk about what's your next career move. Okay? He was able to help find jobs for 2 of them immediately, tee up an opportunity for a third, and even for the people he didn't find work for. What do you think the long-term payoff is and takeaway for them is about Matthew?
He's not just a salesman.
This is not just a salesperson, right? So I've heard for years, for decades, we've been talking about building relationships. And to me, the unfortunate misinterpretation of what a relationship is that we are able to talk about sports and weather and other topics other than the business that we're doing. But if you really want to define a relationship, people are going to judge you based on what you do, the actions, and how you handle stuff. Not what you're thinking about doing for people, but what you actually do. And all of these processes that I'm giving you here so far are clear investments of time and energy that you are investing into people that you are really trying to build real meaningful relationships with, and people will always evaluate you on your actions, not on your intentions. So because we're intending to have a well thought out new customer onboarding program doesn't mean we have one, right? So you guys are good so far? Questions, comments? Okay. All right, number 7, I want to, 6, yeah, I got ahead of myself. All right, thanks for helping with the counting. Okay, number 6, clear handoffs. I want clear handoffs from sales to ops and back again. So when does the sales team really hand off the business to a special teams group? And is it clearly defined about when the special teams group brings it back to the sales, back to sales? Okay. So if in the example that I gave you before, so let's say with the drivers from the steel company, so if they found a heat treating opportunity, right? Is the driver supposed to call and arrange for their next load to be heat treated first, or does he call Nancy back at the headquarters and just tell the customer, listen, Nancy handles all of our stuff on heat treating. I'm gonna set up a call for you and her later today. Are you around today? Yes, I am. And I'm gonna have, how does 3 o'clock work? Great. I'm gonna have Nancy call you at 3 o'clock. And because if that handoff is not clearly defined, and I'm a driver and I'm trying to get through my deliveries, I might just jot down on my notepad that they like to heat treat. Okay, I get to enter my name in the raffle, but if I don't get in the truck and, hey, Nancy, I just left XYZ company. It turns out that they need to get their material heat treated. I don't think we knew that. I talked to Jim in charge of their operations. He's expecting your call today at 3 o'clock. That is a clear handoff. That is a home run, and that will get us a lot of business. Okay? And if we understand that, and this is the other thing, if that's happening a lot, and sales is somehow involved in the account, and that's part of their rewards, then the learned behavior for your sales team is, I don't have to do what? I don't have to do everything. I don't have to hover over accounts because we have a clearly defined process where things go back and forth seamlessly and everybody knows what their role is, and I can go find new business like I'm supposed to do and not worry about just holding on to what I've gotten already. And generally too, like the salespeople are not usually the best person to manage the account and all those details anyways. And we may be overstepping some boundaries. But those handoffs have to be clearly defined. As I've seen that way too often. So Tom and our practice is frequently to go out on field rides and just see what's happening at an account and travel with the rep or a special teams group. And I can't tell you the amount of opportunities that we'll tend to see in the field that are just walked right by all day, every day. And I get it, people are busy. I'm going to suggest to you that these days, most people that I run into are feeling completely overwhelmed, personally overwhelmed, professionally overwhelmed. The thought of adding one more phone call, even if it's a smart one, just sounds overwhelming to them. And if it's not well rehearsed, well designed, and rewarded and practiced regularly with a KPI attached to it, it just doesn't happen. You guys, everybody following me on that? Questions, comments? You guys good? No? How are we doing on you guys have clearly defined handoffs back and forth?
Yeah.
This is a big culture thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most companies, truck drivers wouldn't even think of doing this.
I agree.
And the people back in the office, they're going, I'm not going to make a law. So it's a big change.
Yeah. So let's bring it back into one chat, one conversation. So Mark's point was, it's a big culture change, right? So that a lot of people in their office job, like, I don't have time for that. And so again, yes, I agree. Figuring out what are the high priority, low hanging fruit that's right there for us, that not only helps the customer but helps us. It's the absolute win-win, and we have to be oriented towards that. Otherwise, it almost overwhelms all of us because we're working too hard for some of the wrong stuff. Patricia, you had a comment?
Can you give an example of what either a project management team working on it or a technical engineering team with a handoff back and forth?
Yeah. Yeah. So, because here's the other thing that I find happens a lot too. So I was with a group of about 50 special teams players, mid-level managers, the account management team, project management team that you're talking about for another client. And we got into this discussion about requests that come in from clients and how to handle those. And what we identified there is that the mid-level managers, if the big client said, hey, could you do such and such for me, that they would just go ahead and do it. And they would go ahead and do it, and even worse, they wouldn't bill for it, right? And they did this work for free. And it was anywhere from 2 hours to 3 weeks worth of work that they just did it because somebody asked them to. So we had to give them some tools to say, okay, when you get that request, that's normal. Clients are going to ask you to do things, and clients do this intentionally. You might identify and bring it back to the account lead. So we said you got to bring it back to the account lead, and you might say you can answer in one of three ways. You can say, I believe we can do this for you. I don't know if it's a billable event or not. Let me just double check with the account manager. I can have an answer for you by the end of the day, right? So that was one of the options, right? Another option, and we gave them the ability to decide. Another option might be, you know what? Hey, we've worked with you for a long time. I'm supposed to bill you for this. I'm going to do this one for you today. Just know that next time you ask for that, it comes. We're going to probably have to invoice you something in such and such range. And again, it comes back to the account lead. And then what we were doing is in the quarterly business reviews, the other things that we were collecting are all the value-added stuff that we did that maybe we didn't bill for the client, that the executives at the client company had no idea we were even doing. Because I find a lot of times we're doing all this great extra service stuff. People are staying late, bending over backwards to help a big client. But the powers that be really had no idea. And if there's not a mechanism to cycle that back to the quarterly business review, you never get credit for it. Unfortunately, what happens is you get your people worn out. The other thing that we identified in that group is that they had the highest turnover in the company was within those roles. Some sort of mid-level project management that was being squeezed, and they were feeling like overtaxed to get stuff done, and so they were leaving because there was just too much pressure on them. It was really unfortunate. But as we've instituted the QBR process and some other work with that group and gotten better handoffs, all of a sudden that's starting to subside. People that were ready to leave are staying, things like that. Does that help a little bit? Yeah. So. And if we have time, I'll try to give you as many examples as I can fit in. You guys good? Okay, number 7. I want you to define who are your top 5 types of clients. I like you to have maximum up to 5 kinds of clients, right? And really have that well defined. It could be top 2 kinds of clients that you work with. And then have that eventually be all that you work with, all right? If you're new or you're struggling, any client is a great client. And I've traveled. We've been doing work here for a long time. Price of oil is way up and business is good. We're really selective. we're down to like $40 a barrel, things are struggling, guess what? Any business is good, is good business. And so what I think though, when you take on clients that aren't in your sweet spot and you start getting too far outside of what you do, and what you do well and what you do with great efficiency and great payoff for you and for your client, it really starts to water down and drag down your whole organization, okay? And I like to look at things because a lot of sales reps will qualify that, because the client likes me, right? And just because we like each other isn't in and of itself a good enough reason to do business, right? And you've probably taken on he's a great guy, we've really got to help them out. Right, and so that in and of itself is not a really good reason to do business together. But I do want to, so do they like me, and is it good revenue or not, or big revenue, I should say, not good revenue. But I want you to look at other things like what's the profit margin that are we actually realizing from this account? What's the cultural fit, right? What is the long-term? What's the longevity here? When you're looking at new accounts, I like you to look at the lifetime potential of the account, right? What's the lifetime potential of the account, and what is the lifetime potential profit of that account? So maybe it's a $25,000 order, and there's $8,000 of profit in it, okay? And that may or may not be a good size transaction for you. But I really like you to look at, okay, if it's a $25,000 initial order, but it's a $10 million lifetime potential of this client with $4 million of profit. If it was $4 million of profit lifetime, I would probably look at it differently. And until you look at the lifetime value, but there's certain clients you look at, well, yeah, if we work together forever, we might make $150,000, $250,000 worth of profit versus, and the worst thing is that $4 million profit customer, I'll start letting them down because I'll be burning resources with the wrong clients. And if they don't measure up in some way, then I have to figure out what's my strategy. And usually one of the recommendations we'll have is if they don't fall into your type 5 TOPS clients, then we need to refer them out to perhaps a loose, friendly competitor, if you will, or another kind of business where there's an opportunity, and I have some solid people that I can refer to where they refer to me the kinds of business that I do well, and I refer to them the kinds of business they do well. That's really the best win for all parties. Yes, sir.
The big one for us, it's a tough one, is we have decent margins, I would say decent, but they don't pay us.
Yeah.
They'll string you out 100 days. And
Oh, yeah.
You're trying to figure out the time value of money and how it affects the margins and your working capital, hits, and that's the big dilemma for us. And we have a lot of people saying, get rid of these guys that don't pay, and we're saying, well, maybe we should keep them because we like them. That's a tough.
Well, it belongs. So in our process, we'll set up a matrix within that and take a look at what are the things that we value, and then you end up with different tiers. Right, and we'll get the 4 quadrants, and then we have some sort of offshoot category. So, and then you'll see a clear ranking, and part of that we figured in is timely payments. And again, if I've got quarterly business reviews and I'm in sync with them, and my CFO is tight with their CFO, and I'm doing all this, I can fix that stuff faster. And that's a big deal, right? Difference between getting paid in 30 days versus 120 days. That's a really big deal, especially depending on your business. If sometimes that's at risk. Business, that they may have to default depending on what's happening in the market. You can only handle so much default stuff and still maintain any kind of profitability yourself. So, yes, sir.
Back on your types of clients, we're right in the middle of that discussion right now with our business, and
Great.
we got them in 3 categories.
Okay.
But I guess to your point, in our business, you kind of poking there at oil, but that is our business.
Mm-hmm.
And what we really live is when the market is up or stable, growing or stable, the profitability really swings to that top tier of customers.
Sure.
But when the oil price cycles, commodity cycle down,
yeah,
if we didn't have the transactional business, we would have really been hurting. So it's not like you can't refer that off. I mean, you've got to
Understood.
portfolio.
Yeah, understood. And then figuring out who in my team is best suited to manage what kinds of accounts. How well spread out is that through my special teams groups? So, and maybe in busier times, I pull off special teams groups from small accounts to large accounts. So there's a way to allocate my internal resources. So those are the kinds of things you want to think through, right? So, and if you want to follow up dialogue about, I'm glad you're in the process right now. That's a great sign.
Yeah.
So, good. Okay, you guys good? Number 8. I want to know who is the CXO? Who is your CXO? CXO, if you're not familiar with the title, is the Client Experience Officer. Client Experience Officer is somebody inside of your organization that has a direct line to you as the leader of the organization. They have a direct line to the customer, and it is their job to sort of internally police, oversee, be an independent ear to what are the things that we are doing that you like, what are the things that we're doing that you don't like. And it could be, and I see this happen a lot, as people become friendly with their account reps in some way, shape, or form. And maybe they love 90% of what the account rep is doing for them, but there's 5 or 10% of the stuff that they're doing, they're like, just wish they would just stop, whatever that was. But because the 90% is good enough, they don't feel empowered or confident enough to tell them, and sometimes those little things grow to become almost insurmountable sorts of issues. So I had a client I was talking to one day, and he said he had been out to do some field rides. He had one particular sales rep on his team that he was having some issues with, and he said, well, I'm going to just go on the field and just go visit a bunch of customers with them, see what's going on. So he went out during the morning, and things were going very, very well, really, on this field ride, and all the customers had very nice things to say about him. They went to lunch with one of their customers. The sales rep, during the lunch, got up to go to the restroom. While they were at the restroom, the customer leaned over to the president of the company and said, listen, you've got to fire this guy. He's perhaps the worst person who has ever called on us in the entirety of the time that we have worked in this business. I don't know what he's doing, why you still have him. You got to let him go. And it was just interesting. And so what I want you to have is somebody in your organization who's got access to the clients and access to you, can work with impunity, and be able to just find out what's going on. What are the little improvements that they don't feel like telling directly to their primary contact? And now this could be a full-time position in your company, or I also like this as a rotating role in an organization. So you might take a project manager, and for 1 year they are the CXO, and then that might rotate to another project manager, or might rotate over to somebody in another division in the company, because it also allows that key leaders in your organization to get great knowledge of what's happening in the business, and so that they can serve in that role during that period of time. Make sense to you guys? Good? Okay. Number 9. Number 9 is about the contract renewal process. And again, I like you to get way ahead of things. So in an ideal world, assuming you do run on annual contracts, I'll check the time. Okay, if you're running annual contracts, ideally, if you're renewing annual contracts in November, December, it's way too late. This conversation should be coming up at the end of during the second QBR, so June, July timeframe. It should be finalized by the end of the third QBR, sometime September, October. If you are engaged in some sort of volume, either volume kind of contracts, I would like those to be extended. A lot of people put volume contracts into annual process. I would rather run those over 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, right? So those sorts of things. And again, I wouldn't necessarily be discounting. I might suggest, instead of a 6% increase, if your volume over the next 18 to 24 months is at above level, we will hold your price increases at 3%. right? And it doesn't mean that you have to take margin away. You can still grow margin and get volume, and you just have to be confident and comfortable doing that. And you have to be so intertwined with your customer that it would be detrimental to their business to unravel the relationship. And we know we are there based on our ability to implement these processes. Is if you are implementing all of these to a T, nobody wants to leave you, and it really doesn't matter how much you're charging them. And a 3% price increase is a nothing sort of price increase because of everything that you're doing for them. Does that help a little bit? Okay, you guys doing okay? Number 10. So, last one on my current list is referrals to your customers. Referrals to your customers. And I suggested before that our ability to really add value outside of what we're charging for them. I always find it interesting that value adds, people talk about value adds as part of the services that we provide. Like, no, those are the services you're providing. These aren't, the value adds are things that you do outside of the business relationship that you have. And so the kinds of things that you can do for them, sometimes you can refer them customers. Okay? So some of you are in a position to introduce them to additional business, right? So you best understand their business, you know who their customers are, you can create connections for them on their behalf. That is a very common thing to do. Some of them, sometimes you can refer them to other strategic partners, meaning, so you provide a particular service for your clients. You are in a position to learn what other services or products that they most commonly need. You are aware of other service providers in the industry. And so if I was talking to a general contractor yesterday, and he says, yeah, if somebody can introduce me to a really good electrician, right, that is a huge win for us. Because finding a really good electrician who will honor their schedule, stay on time, stay within budget, and knows what they're doing, that's huge. And so if I can count on you, not just for whatever you bring to me initially, maybe it's other businesses, maybe it's other service providers based on your knowledge of the industry, huge win. The third one that comes up very commonly is employees. So if I can help with your hiring based on my knowledge of the business and all of the people that I've encountered over all of the years that I've been involved in the industry, I should be a huge resource for employees. And again, if not only are you doing an excellent job on all these other things that I'm paying you to do, you have full insight and awareness into all the goals of our company, my department, me personally, and you're bringing all this to the table, I can't afford to ever walk away from you. I just can't. Right? However, this requires an intentionality, being very deliberate. And in some cases, like you suggested, it's a cultural shift from, hey, I'm doing my job, to, am I really taking a look at the overall picture of who this client is and figuring out what are the key things that each special team member is, we run our companies, but we're not our day-to-day in the company. And if you're the day-to-day, you're probably really worn out. So, because the day-to-day should be really your team. I come back to my friend Mike. He goes to work because he likes to go to work. I said he spends the majority of his time surfing and traveling, but when he goes to his company, he's going to his company because his company is cool. And the people who work there love what they do, because when you have this level of engagement and you do so much for your customers, the feedback, the positive feedback that comes back to you for all of the employees that work there, make it an incredible place to work, right? Where people take real pride and ownership into all of these deliberate practices and know exactly what you're asking of them, and it has a tremendous payoff for yourself, for your employees, and your customers, and that's really how it should be. Is this helpful?
Very.
All right. Questions? Comments? No?
A comment.
Yeah, please.
With the shale gas revolution in this country, there's
Yeah.
a lot of reseller companies in the plastic resin business who are entering the market.
Okay.
From foreign countries.
Mm-hmm.
And they speak the language so well, they don't know forwarder, or how do you hire people, how do you retain people, China, this kind of thing. We love when we get these kind of questions because we just pour out all the recommendations and value, the little tricks we've learned on hiring, retention.
Yeah.
And it pays off a lot.
Yeah, so that's the real value add. The other things that you're doing for people that they're not hiring, they weren't hiring you for, but that extra bit of insight and knowledge that you've acquired, those things are extraordinarily meaningful. It's sometimes the intangibles, it's those extra level of details, and being able to do that has a real payoff.
A friend in need is a friend indeed. That's how
Yeah.
it comes off, and that's how I like it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, very well said. So, okay. Other comments, questions? No?
This is sort of random, but how often do you refine these 10 and do you ever add more or take, reduce any of them or combine any of them?
So I would say it's always it's a work in progress. I think we're constantly retooling so for us, if we're studying your special teams, we're always looking at, okay, and I'll take you through an exercise to help you get there. Like, what are the priority special teams that need the most work? What are I can't ask everybody to do everything, right? So a lot of it is constant reprioritization. So if there's 3 handoffs that I needed people to be able to do, what are those 3 handoffs, right? And if I lose out on the list of the other 10 that I could do, that's okay. So I'm always reprioritizing and refining constantly. Yeah, it's a fluid, living, breathing process. So yeah, good question. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a break. During the break, if you haven't already, I want you to add up the scores. Scale of 1 to 10, each one, total them up. When you come back, right, we're going to talk about what the scores mean, what to do with them, where to go with them. I have on my clock 9:31, so why don't we come back 9:46 and we'll do another section. Okay?
Good.
Thank you. So did you guys do the scores at the break? Scale 1 to 10, add them up. Some of us are still working on the math. It's okay. I love getting adults to do math. It's like one of the funnest things to watch ever. Which, by the way, having good basic math skills in a sales role or any business role is really important, right? I had a group that I was working with recently. It was a kind of national sales meeting, and it's a really talented group of people and very, very successful company. And we were talking about, we have a guideline. It's called 70-30 rule, meaning that the prospect should be talking at least 70% of the time, and the salesperson should be talking no more than 30% of the time. And so I asked this group, so if you have an hour-long sales call and you're talking for no more than 30% of the time, what's the most you're allowed to talk? 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 22 minutes. Not one person came up, I think, well, fine, it took like, and a couple of people broke out the calculators. Came up with 18. It's like, whew, yeah, no wonder you're giving away a few points of margin here. So where were your scores? This is your first crack at this, so what's your starting scores? Where are we at?
23.
23, good. Okay, 24? 25? 24, boy, where's the close? This group is really tight. Huh?
51.
51, wow, very good score.
Winning.
45?
That's my goal.
Johnny? 24? 24?
34.
34? 53, some good ones, huh?
41.
41? Okay. Yeah. So anybody outside of that? I got 21 to 53. Anybody outside of that? No? Okay. So, and that's fairly common when we first meet Vistage members. Typically, we find the scores in the 20s, 30s, 40s, things like that. And here's kind of how it works. It works a little bit like the Richter scale, and unfortunately there aren't many earthquakes here in the Houston area. You got enough stuff going on with
flooding or whatever, right? But if there were one here in Sugarland and we had a 2.3 earthquake, that would have very little impact on our meeting. I don't even know that we would feel that or even notice it, frankly. But if we had a 7.3 earthquake, we would feel that, right? That would be impactful. And here's what I find is when your scores are in those 20s, 30s, 40s, the business that you're retaining has to do with the quality of work that you do and your product offerings and things like that. When you add on a very thoughtful client retention process and you add that to what your offerings are and you get your scores into the 70s and up, the power of that and the way it hits your bottom line and the engagement throughout your employment group and your customer base is just phenomenal, right? And like I said, I keep coming back to my friend Mike. He comes to work 3 days a week because he likes it there. It's a fun place to go. It's really cool what they're doing in their business, and everybody in the organization knows what's asked of them, right? So, and before we're done, I'm gonna get you down the road of how to start to pass this on inside of your organization, so you can figure out how you make it work in your individual locations. So, any comments, questions, things you want to throw at me before I move on? No? Okay. So let's keep going. You want. Ready? I am going to, what do we got here? I like that. I liked your quote, by the way. I thought that was completely appropriate. Oh, I'll just put it over here. I might share this.
That's fine.
Yeah. And like most things you do, Fred, very thoughtful to have that. So here's our next piece. Some of you already flipped the page. We're going to talk about new client onboarding. And it's just one page over. And everybody should find it. And I'm going to take you through the 4 stages of new client onboarding. So number 1, what I want you to do is I want to show appreciation and acknowledgement, right? Appreciate and acknowledge. So the what I lack for in spelling skills, I make up for in math skills. So if you guys want to flip that story on me and ask me to spell just about anything. Fortunately, in sales, spelling is somehow more forgiven. I think math can be a really detrimental mistake. But so appreciation and acknowledgement. One thing I like to caution against being overly thankful, because what some people tend to do is thank you so much for your business, and they go a little overboard gushing on the thank you part of it. What's the problem with that? It does come across a little bit desperate, and it almost it almost catapults us down into the vendor ranks, if you will, right? So thanks for awarding us the business, as opposed to really thinking about and saying, hey, I appreciate the vote of confidence, right? I appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into your search. I appreciate the nod that you gave to us, and I know you did a thoughtful and exhaustive search, and just showing appreciation for that process and their choice, which to me is actually very different than thanking them for the business like they've done you a favor, right? Because it's really the opposite way, is we're really helping them with whatever existing problems they have, right? Is everybody with me on that concept? And then the other thing that I like you to do is to acknowledge the current state of the problem that they have. Because when you get hired, right, to do anything for anybody, that customer currently has what? Our prospect has what? A problem, right? An issue, a challenge, a unique set of circumstances that they are somehow frustrated by or having some difficulties managing, and they've hired you to help them with that problem. And I think it is very important
for us to acknowledge the problem state that exists today, because it's really whose problem? It's really the customer's problem. And if you don't acknowledge the current state of affairs, you might find yourself inadvertently taking ownership to that entire problem. We have been hired to help resolve that issue, but they still own the problem. And I think it is very important at the outset to acknowledge any challenges, any difficulties. So maybe they went with somebody else. They went with the cheap people, and they got frustrated and came to you. You've probably had that happen, right? So that set up probably set off a chain reaction of problems. And I think what happens sometimes is some people, in an effort to impress somebody new, say, "Oh, no problem. We'll take care of that for you. That's easy for us to fix." And now you have overpromised, and you have set yourself up to underdeliver, and even worse, you've bought the problem early on, and it really resides with them. Everybody follow me on that? Mm-hmm. And it is a delicate and important balance, but I think it's very important you acknowledge, hey, I'm so glad you trusted us in taking care of your father and the condition that he's in. I gotta let you know, post-stroke, there's a lot of variables here that people aren't always aware of, and so I want to alert you to, some of the conditions that might exist in his current state, right? And to very thoughtfully just acknowledge the current state that they have, I think is a very important piece to do. Does that make sense to everybody? You guys all with me on that? And then the second component, right, is I really want to work on managing the expectations. I got to manage the expectations. And so, if I'm working in aerospace, I can't rush everything, and I'm certain people in every industry want stuff rushed and they're faster. I definitely, what's going on with that Boeing 737 MAX right now, right? That I'm wondering if I'm flying that today, right?
Or their stock prices certainly.
Yeah, the Boeing stock price took a big hit, but it occurs to me that whatever was happening in the manufacturing process somewhere, they were saying, look, we got deadlines, they have orders to fill, so have your people work double shifts, for the next 6 months to hit the deadline. And I had tired workers working double shifts just to hit a deadline. I've really got to manage the expectations. So you're all going to feel pressure from your clients to fix things faster. But I think it's really critical that we do a good job of talking about realistic timelines, right? Sometimes our timelines are impacted by weather events, right? Sometimes our timelines are impacted by a variety of uncontrollables, weather being one of them, supply being one of them. I might send a caretaker out to somebody's home who I know has the most experience dealing with stroke victims. However, his communication skills to the family might feel a little abrupt. If you'd prefer, right, I could get somebody who has great communication skills with just not quite as much experience. And if I just had that little bit of conversation in advance and the family says, I don't care, they can be rude to us as long as they do a really good job taking care of my dad, right? So managing the expectations of those little nuances that as experts in the industry, we should be aware of and we should be communicating to our customers on a regular basis before it comes up. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes, sir.
I agree with what you just said. But how many times can someone actually do that? What you just said.
How many times?
In other words, there's two different people you could send out to a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have many of these situations going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
So who's responsible and how do you keep up with that?
Yeah. So in terms of keeping up with that, I come back over here to my process, right? So the QBR, the quarterly business review, for example, for anything that I didn't take care of in my onboarding process, It's a cleanup, and it's a chance to monitor. And this is kind of real world. What happens is I find is we're rushing. We intended to do this, and we even set up a meeting to do it. The meeting was supposed to be for an hour at 9 o'clock. The customer got there at 9:15. They had to leave at 10 to 10. We spent half the time talking about some ancillary thing, and we only covered a quarter of the content. Right? Now, do you have the discipline to say, okay, we've only covered a quarter of what you need to know before you move into our property? So can we reschedule for you to come back? Do you have another hour, and stick with that, or do we just let that go? Right?
I mean, I'm just hypothetically saying that, obviously we have problems with maintenance people, for example.
Sure.
And two different types of maintenance people. Some actually don't speak even English.
Yeah.
And some speak, and then the tenant just speaks only English, and the tenant, our maintenance person only speaks Spanish. This is a real world.
Yeah, get it. Totally makes sense.
We can't even hire a bilingual or very difficult or even training. So, really getting a hold of just hypothetically the tenant.
Yeah.
Beforehand, even if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Before the maintenance person goes in the apartment, is not easy.
Oh, for sure.
Extremely hard. In fact, almost like non-existent. So even after the case, it's hard.
So that issue alone, communication, is huge. So I think it really. This is what I was talking. Remember, before I was talking about not taking full ownership of problems, because in order for us to work effectively together, it's a two-way street, right? So I might, so certain things like setting aside. I'll talk about responsiveness. A great way to set up responsiveness is I might ask this question of, if you have an issue, how quickly would you like us to respond? They say, well, that day, at least by the end of the day. Great. I think we can honor that. Can I ask the same of you? Right? Because if I am going to fix a problem, because how many of you have this issue where you reach out to a customer or a client, and they might take a week to get back to you, they might get 2 weeks to get back to you, or a month, and then they're mad at you because you haven't fixed it by the time they get back to you. Right? But again, if I'm really managing expectations appropriately, then I'm in the habit of setting these sort of guidelines out in the beginning. And it's true for all relationships. So when I met my wife, and she's the dearest, sweetest person that I think I've ever met, and most people who've met her would agree. Her name is Lena. And I said, by the way, I am a nut for UCLA basketball. And our team is just thank God the season is almost over. Thank God. I'm fast forwarding the whole game and watching to see if the score gets close before I even slow it down at actual speed. And I said, by the way, normally I will love spending time with you, talking to you, but if there's a game on, I just about guarantee you I'm going to be watching it, and if it's going badly, I'm going to be saying all kinds of nasty stuff that I would normally not say. So, and so now when there's a game on, especially if it's a rough season like it is, she's like, I think I'm going to go upstairs and watch something else. And she's good with that. And I had that, and I said, and I do an annual guys ski trip every year. I just go away with buddies, and so I schedule my ski trip. She said, great, I'm gonna I'm gonna do a weekend getaway with my girlfriends. It's all good. You just gotta manage the expectations and talk about in advance the circumstances that are likely to come up. And in your business, I expect you, as somebody who does this all the time, to be able to tell me what's going on. So if I'm moving into a building, I've never even thought about a maintenance man coming into my apartment when I'm not there, and you didn't tell me in advance like that, hey, just in case something goes wrong, which it will, your plumbing will certainly break at some point, one of our people is going to need to show up. You may or may not have met them. Do you want to meet them in advance? By the way, their English isn't great, but they're as trustworthy and friendly as a person as I've ever met. Their English isn't great, but they do understand how to fix stuff. If you just tell people, most people can handle just about anything if they know what to expect. And you want to have a great relationship with anybody, you manage the expectations.
Will there ever be a time you would just ask them what's your expectation so we can try and meet it in reality?
Certainly. Yeah, I think certainly just kind of even on responsiveness. Rather than saying we pride ourselves on 24-hour turnaround, if you have an issue, just ask them, and it establishes. And I can ask them on all of that stuff. right? On delivery, on design time. There's so many, because there's so many variables. And if we don't do this, here's what happens. If the salesperson is afraid to do it, and they're like worried to say anything bad about it, and they just hope that it goes okay, now your whole company, the whole rest of your company, is left holding the bag, having to deliver on some impossible standard that was potentially set up by somebody else. And again, that's why you have infighting, right? So certainly I can ask them. Make sense? Questions? Other comments? Yeah.
You know, I kind of do it tongue in cheek. When I do a presentation to customers, I'll start out by saying, you may not want to hear it, but the customer is not always right. And
yeah,
that's
great.
I mean,
I love it.
And you know, it's funny, you get the looks and everything, but it does spark conversation.
Yeah.
To get to this level.
Well, and ask them. But ask them about their customers, right? Are your customers always right? Like, no, our customers are crazy. I mean, we're good, but our customers are crazy. So I love that approach, right? And it's the truth. It's miscommunication. But the main thing I'm trying to get across here is, because you're the experts, I think you have an obligation to tell, especially your new customer, the common sorts of ways that we can go off kilter, so that they know what to expect and they can make the appropriate accommodations before that circumstance happens, or to at least be prepared if that does come up for them, so it doesn't hit them come out of their blind spot and catch them off guard. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. And then the third stage is really about that future partnership. And I really look at all clients, these are partnerships, and we are building a future together, right? And I think it's very important to let new clients know that, again, we appreciate the vote of confidence. Let's acknowledge the certain set of circumstances that you have. Here's some things I want you to be aware of as we get started trying to tackle this. And here's the sort of future that we're looking to build with you, right? And you might say, I know you don't know us very well yet, right? But I'm counting on you getting to know us extraordinarily well, and us becoming a real go-to resource for you, right? And I think you'll see us bend over backwards and work really hard out of the gate to earn that confidence and to earn that trust. I'm going to imagine you're going to call us from time to time for some sort of favor. You guys have your clients call you for favors, right? And you guys charge your clients for favors? Okay, only a couple of you said yes. If you're not, so here's what I missed out. Because I think on managing expectations, I'm going to imagine you're going to call us. Maybe it's going to be, hey, we're supposed to place an order. I know the lead time is 6 weeks. I need it in 2. Right, and I get that stuff's going to happen, and we're going to bend over backwards to make that happen. Listen, it may come with an invoice, right? There's nothing wrong with charging for favors. In fact, a lot of the organizations that we've worked with, a large percentage of the profits often come from things like expedite fees and change orders and things like that. And if you've paved the way and you just let them know that it's okay, then you'll find that your margin contribution from those favors is huge.
Casey Brown, taught us, she calls it hot sauce.
Okay.
And we're doing that a lot now, and we make a lot of revenue and profits on things that they don't really pay attention to.
Yeah. There's, and that's what I'm saying, is that we have to be very thoughtful about this. So I'm asking you to treat people the right way. Make sure you've got the right kinds of customers that you're serving, so where the potential is there, and then really look at the entirety of the relationship and the potential and pave the way so that it's not an issue. So when Patricia asked the question before about how do I help the special teams groups, those project management people, because it was really interesting with that company about the turnover that they were facing with those groups that were fielding all the problems and the favors. Because it's your special teams people that are usually the front line of the favor request, right? So maybe somebody in your sales office got the account, but it's the clinician or the worker in the home that is fielding most of the requests, right? They're asking that person, and if that person should have some tools on how to field those requests and let people know, like, sure, I'm sure we can get it done for you. I don't know what the invoice will be, or if it goes over $1,000 to add that, I'll have somebody. If it's going to be over $1,000, you can do a not to exceed. If it's going to be over $1,000, I'll have somebody from our corporate office contact you to. Otherwise, we'll just get it done. Perfect, right? If you can do stuff like that all the time and just train your special teams players to say that, how many times could you possibly charge an extra $1,000 or $10,000 for something that they would gladly pay for in an instant? That we might be doing for free otherwise, and then even worse, arguing with the customer later. The other part of this is there's a word that's almost gone out of business dialogue. It's about loyalty, and I find most people enjoy being loyal to certain providers. Fair, right? So there's people that you've done business with over a number of years, and you enjoy being loyal with them, and you count on them for certain things. And I think it's important to let your customers know that you're looking to earn their loyalty, right? That you are fully aware that at some point somebody new will come knocking on their door offering to do something very similar to what we offer, and I'm hoping that we are over time earning their loyalty, right? And that they would feel confident enough in us that as down the road, as those competitors show up, that they would ask them to keep moving because of all the things that we've done over this extended period of time. And I think if you don't talk to people about your desire to earn their loyalty, it will be difficult to capture. Okay, because what I've seen in companies is they are flooded with a lot of young people in the young MBAs and purchasing groups, right, who are all about putting all their vendors on spreadsheets, throwing out competition, and kind of eradicating some of the groundwork that we paved along the way, and we have to be intentional about capturing that in the beginning. All right? Good. So, you guys good so far? And then the last component to new client onboarding is really that conversation about those introductions and referrals that you are counting on earning over the course of the time of your relationship. And what I've found is that, unfortunately, most people are not having this dialogue. We all love getting referrals and introductions, right? We've all gotten them. Some of us might hear say most of our business comes from referrals or introductions. Although I will tell you there's some shocking statistics when you study it, because the number one reason people don't get referrals, they don't ask. This kills me. It kills me. Right? We've done all this work, right? They've gone through the selection process. They said, we fell in love with you. You're our choice, right? And we don't bring it up. Now, how come we don't bring it up?
Well, you haven't proven yourself yet.
Okay, so there's some fear that I've not yet proven myself, so I am not worthy to even discuss it as a concept. Right?
Well, if somebody asked me if I was a new client of somebody, and they up front immediately pitch me for referrals when I don't have 6 months of experience that in fact proves to me that if I made a referral, I wouldn't be taking a risk.
Yeah. So, and by the way, Fred, that thought is one of the most common. That's in my top 3 of reasons why people don't do it. Because in their experience, I do feel like somebody's got to prove it to me that they're who they say they are. Mark?
And Fred, aren't you referring to that what precedes loyalty is trust? Trust will then...
Proven trust.
Yes.
Right.
Then we're qualified to have them be loyal.
Sure.
Well, I wouldn't refer somebody to another chair that I didn't know that chair was hitting on all cylinders.
Right. You don't trust them yet.
I don't trust them yet.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, John?
I wouldn't want to send a signal that I'm looking past the client in front of me.
That's another very common reason, right? That people don't bring this up. Okay. So to me, the primary reason we don't ask is there's some bit of fear, right? Fear that I'm not known yet, I'm not trusted yet, I don't want to signal the wrong thing here in some way, shape, or form. So that's the number one reason, some bit of fear. The number two reason, it's not a play in the playbook, and the team is not well rehearsed, and it's uncomfortable, because the truth is, it's not your sales team that has to be the best at this. It's your special teams players that have to be really good at this, because on average, it's your special teams players are the ones that are doing the favors, and they're the ones proving themselves and gaining trust and loyalty and bending over backwards for your clients. So they have to be in a position to capture these referrals ongoing for perpetuity for as long as you're working together, right? And I think another reason is we don't often manage the clock well, and we're not paying attention to the time factor and people's need to let go from one place to the next. And so even if you had a great meeting with somebody and they loved you and they thought you did the best bit of work ever, they're off to the next meeting and now they're gone. Question, yeah.
Wouldn't you think, if you're managing your account properly, the better place to get the referral is through the special teams, as opposed to prior to you ever delivering a PO?
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, I would say upon delivery of the PO, not
Sure.
receipt of the PO.
So you could say that, certainly, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive. In fact, to me, what we really need to be doing is conditioning our new customers for the kinds of relationships that we'd like to have. They might not feel that way immediately. It might take them 6 months to get to that point, or it might take them a week. It might take them a year. We can't quite predict that, but I think it's really important in the new client onboarding that we condition them for the kinds of relationships that we look to establish that we like to have, right? And that most of us do most of our business through referrals and introductions anyways. So when we meet somebody who came through our direct marketing effort or something, it could be almost an outlier, and to get your direct marketing costs down, there's a real case to be made for wanting to work on this. But you guys all follow me on the concept, right? So, yes, sir.
We are in the apartment business. So when we have a new customer on the very first day, we tell them these rules, and at the end we also tell we have a referral policy. If you bring another customer, you can earn like $250.
Yeah.
So this is okay, right? To ask for the referral on the first day?
It's definitely okay to ask for the referral on the first date. The way you described it was interesting. Here's the rules, and we'll give you $250 if you give me somebody. If you don't, we don't like you. So the delivery on that is really important, right? The reason, and so I'll just tackle the reward portion. So the reason that they want to refer their friends to your apartment is that your maintenance guy takes care of everything. And as soon as they call, he shows up right away. Hey, by the way, and that's why you want to refer your friends. By the way, if you do, and somebody actually moves in, we'll even take $250 off of your rent. So how you position that, I don't want to bribe people for the referral. I want them to refer me for the right reasons. We're coming to here because we found the dearest, sweetest, and most attentive maintenance man you're ever going to find. And just because he's a good enough reason to live here, right? And you'll find that to be the case. And if you have friends that are being let down in other places and they'd like to move here, and then on top of that, you can add your incentive. But I wouldn't make that, I don't like to make those the primary reason for the referral. You follow me on that? So it's the how I deliver it. So the concept is fine, it's just how I deliver it. Okay, so I'm gonna share an example of a client that I work with that I only work with him for a relatively short period of time. In this period of time, he owned the company for about 3 years. He was able to buy the company, grow the company substantially enough, sell the company, and he and his family, I live in Southern California, if I didn't mention that, and that's where he was from. He sold his company there, and then he bought a huge horse ranch in Montana. He and his family moved there. He's lived there since. And his entire marketing and sales campaign revolved around this concept. And so he was in the residential roofing business. And so when he started work with a new client, his onboarding meeting usually occurred in the kitchen, let's say, at the kitchen table. And he would say, hey, first of all, I just wanted to let you know I appreciate the vote of confidence. I know you had a bunch of choices of people who could have taken on this project for you, and I appreciate the nod and your trust and confidence in us. And I wanted just to talk to you a little bit about the project that we're about to start. And they said typically it is typically about a 4-day project. With rare occasions, it can go longer. I don't see bad weather in the forecast, but if there's hail tomorrow, then it's going to be longer than 4 days, and I have no control over hailstorms. And but it should be done in and out in about 4 days. Day 1, just so you know, it's going to seem like a bit of a war zone around here. We're going to come in, we're going to put a big dumpster on your driveway. I will have a crew up on your roof. We're going to be pulling off all the old shingles. I'm going to warn you, there's a chance that there's any dust or debris in the attic, it might start to fall or drift into the house in some way. So if you have a prized possession like a comforter or something like that that you're afraid will get soiled or dirty, please take precautions. You know, I haven't seen any pets around here, but if you have a cat or a small dog, please make sure that they are, you know, well attended to before. Some of you have pets right here. Some of you love your pets maybe more than the people you live with. So like little detail, but really important, right? And then as we're pulling off the shingles, that's all that is intended to go in the dumpster. Every now and again we've missed. If we hit a plant or something like that, I promise you we will replace the plant before we leave the premises. And by date, and by the end of that day, I'll be up on the roof with my quality control manager looking for any dry rot or structural damage. Occasionally we do find damage, structural damage of some sort. Typically those repair costs run somewhere between $500 and $5,000. It is a rare occasion when it is more than that. If it is, I'll be sure to let you know, and we make some decisions about what you want to do. But by day 2, we should have the structural work done and be starting to apply the new roof. Day 3, day 4, we'll be finishing the job. I will be back on the roof with myself and my quality control manager personally inspecting every flash point, every corner, every vent, any windows, ceiling, what are those called? Ceiling lights? Skylights. There's a term for them. Any skylights, anything like that, so that I know that when we are done, and for as long as you live in this house, whenever that next rainstorm comes, you will not worry at all about whether there is a leak. Do I have to go home? Do I have to watch it? And that is my job. And here's your job. While we're up on the roof, making sure that the project goes as planned, if you have neighbors that you know that you think might in any way have an interest in a similar project, if you do know them, I just didn't know if you'd feel comfortable letting them know what we were doing, and I just didn't know if you would be open to that. And I want to ask you, what do you think happened for that roofer as he was working?
The neighbors would come up to him and ask his rates or ask his services.
So pretty much what happened all week long, about 90% of the projects, not every project, right? Some people don't know any of their neighbors and will never do that. But about 90% of the projects, the client was coming over with their neighbor and going, hey, I want you to meet Fred. I've already spoken about the project. They have an idea what you cost. They're hoping that you can fit them into their schedule. Right? For the entire time that he owned the company, the only issue that he ever had, really, the only issue he ever had was, can I hire enough quality workers to get on roofs and stay on schedule and do the kind of work that I am known for in the industry, right? And that was his only issue. Now, as I described that, what about that onboarding process stood out to you? What are some things you noticed? What'd you pick up?
Set your expectations.
Okay, he definitely set expectations, right? What kind of detail did you catch on the expectation setting? What was important?
Timeline.
Okay, timeline for one. Yeah, that's a big deal. And allotting for unforeseen circumstances, which we all have, right? What else?
Guaranteed quality outcome.
Yeah, how did you do that?
Personal inspection and continuing to reference the layers of checks, the quality manager.
Yeah, just to really let them know our internal process, because a lot of times you guys have internal processes, but your customers don't have full appreciation of what that means for them, right? In fact, as the customer is listening to this roofer talk, like you guys have all hired contractors, right? Just as when you think about contractors that you've hired in the past, just the thoughtfulness of that conversation, what does that suggest to you about that contractor?
They're on top of it.
Oh my gosh, thank God I found this contractor, because we've all had some sort of nightmare experiences with people don't work like, yeah, we'll be there Tuesday. And Tuesday was really Wednesday or next week. And then we're going to start in. That's what most people are expecting, but when you go through that detail, the other thing I found interesting, I was sharing the story for a client. We had a 2 or 3 day kickoff meeting with a new client. And one of the people in attendance says to me, her name's Peggy, she says, I just had my roof replaced. She goes, this story is hilarious. I just had my roof replaced. And just like you said, my comforter on my bed got ruined. I was furious. I would never recommend that roofer to anybody. Now, that had zero to do with the quality of the job that was done, right? But it had everything to do with her lack of expectation. Because how often does somebody in their lifetime get a roof replaced? Once? Maybe?
Hurricanes.
Huh? Yeah, post-hurricane, okay, maybe twice, right? But as the professional, that's what I'm suggesting, like, we go through it all the time. It's our job to let them know. And those little nuanced things, so like imagine, damaging a plant, letting somebody, okay, saw the plant damage, I know you guys are going to fix it, I don't even have to get upset about it, right? And that's what they started to go to their neighbors and brag about, was, listen, they did damage the plant, just like you said, they broke one and they've already replaced it. I didn't even have to talk to them about it, right? You definitely need to come over and meet this person. He's like, no, I've never met anybody like that, right? That's what you're looking for, right? What else did you notice on that? Anything else stand out that maybe you could apply in your business?
It's all about the customer.
Yeah, it's all about the customer and their experience. And again, I needed, so part of it was before he had that external onboarding, he did an internal onboarding. He got up there with his quality control manager and said, let's walk this roof, right? What have we got? All right, this has been a problem. We've already seen the leakage, so we already know what? There's possible damage in there. So if he tells somebody in advance, remember we were talking about expedite fees, hot sauce, or however you want to get there, is $500 to $5,000, and he comes in and says, hey, we found $2,500 worth of damage, the customer says what? Great. Oh, phew, good. It's only $2,500. You don't have that conversation with that customer, and you come tell them, I found $2,500 worth of damage. Now what's the customer think about you?
You try to get extra.
You're a rip-off artist. You're just trying to gouge me. They went and told all the neighbors that these guys got in here, they sold me a roof for $6,000, and then they tried to gouge me for an extra $2,500. Don't touch those guys, right? And it's all about managing the expectations and paving the way, because it completely changes the dynamic. Because you can add, by the way, while your roof is off, replacing structural stuff is $500 to $5,000. If the roof was on there, you're talking anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 worth of work to do structural work, right? So if I keep it under $5,000, it's a completely different. You guys all follow me on that focus? Think of how many products and services that you offer that if you positioned it right in the onboarding could add to your bottom line in a very appropriate way where your customer is saying thank you for doing this for me while you were here, as opposed to getting mad at you or bidding your work out or something like that. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Under promise and over deliver.
Under promise and over deliver. A known and accepted
principle that is violated by 90+% of all companies 90% of the time. And the number one offenders is which group in your company? Oh yeah. Look, all right now, look, I root for salespeople. Like they're one of my favorite teams. So I'm trying, and part of what I try to do with what Tom and I are doing all the time with sales teams, like tell your customers the truth, tell them the truth early and often, and they'll trust you more, right? Even if the truth is ugly, right? Just get it out there, and let them know they can handle it, right? It's not that bad. But and if I do all this regularly, I mean, then all of a sudden the add-on business. But again, so people hear what they want to hear. So my special teams players, if they're coming in, now sometimes my special teams players are in the onboarding conversation and sometimes they're not. So maybe I make a decision on certain level cases, the quality control manager comes to that project, right? Sometimes it's handled by the account-facing representative. So you got to think about who do I want in that onboarding meeting, what's their role in it. But the better I do that out of the gate, the easier it is. But they may need to reinforce that, right? Because a lot happens between, so when they sign the lease, maybe they flew into town, they're moving here on a corporate move, they sign the lease in a blur, you told them all that stuff, you check the box that you told them everything, so did that get walked through again at move-in, right? And maybe or at the delivery of their housewarming gift or whatever you're doing. So think about, like, you may need to repeat this exercise multiple times for people to get it and to really hear it, because you do it all the time. They just do this infrequently, if ever. Okay? Questions, comments, thoughts? You guys good? All right. I'm going to keep going. Da-da-da. I saw your picture there of the squirrel.
Types of decisions.
Types of decisions. That was great. Okay, let's see here. All right, so I'm going to stick with my theme a little bit that I started you down with around referrals and introductions. I'm just going to share a concept for you because if you want to, so Alex and I are having a conversation at the break. If you haven't really analyzed lately your true costs of sales inside of your organization, I think that is a calculation that you should go through annually. Like, what are your true costs of sales? What does it really cost you to acquire a client? What are all these, where do these costs come from? And so part of what I want you to do is to be able to win and acquire business with minimal cost of sales with maximum potential. Okay, and one of the best ways to do this is through the referrals and introductions. That's the most efficient way. So we went out and we hired a graphics design firm to come up and build us this model. And
very flashy.
and they came up with this design. So this simple design this is the base of your referral tree. So here's the concept. Every time you add a new customer from your direct marketing or sales effort, you get a branch off the tree. So I went out and I was knocking on doors and I got XYZ company. And then I boosted up my direct media campaign or my digital tracking software, who's shopping for this service in what area, and I got this company to join. And then we went out and we did a national campaign and we acquired the B&B group. And every time from your direct marketing and sales efforts you add a new client, you get a direct branch off the tree. Okay? If XYZ company introduces you to Fred's BBQ, then you got a branch off of that, and if Fred introduces you over here to Jim, and Jim introduces you to Mark, all of a sudden you get a branch off the tree.
And the goal is to get fuller branches. Now, if I look at your referral tree, okay, and your referral tree only has single branches like this, what does that tell me about your business? We're not getting very many referrals, if any, right? What else does it tell me?
Or your quality of service is poor.
There may be a service issue. That's possible, right? That's probably worth looking at in terms of client retention. All right, what else does it tell me?
I'm not asking.
Okay, that's possible. Yeah, maybe I'm not asking. It's not built into our process. Yeah. So what I see instantly, if I see this, is that I know that your company is working way too hard for two. Yeah. That looks way more entertaining. One guy on 2 sheets with a couple of that. I get This is like the 3-ring circus. Like, this elephant guy is okay. This is the tiger trainer over there. All right, we'll come back to the elephant guy. So, but
You can scale that way.
Huh?
You can scale that way. Your cash flow is going to be poor as you're spending money to acquire customers in this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Your scalability is very low. Right? My cash flow is going to be poor. I'm probably asking my people to do too many things to keep up with new people. If you're always working with new people that don't even know you very well, the ramp up of new people that don't know you, so the training costs associated with that, the loyalty, the connection, the time it takes to acquire that business, the margins that I won that business at, all the math is wrong. And what should be happening is I should have very full branches, right? And with each one of these having an extension on them, and some of them will be just prolific branches, right, where they introduce you to more than you can even keep up with, right? And that's what we're looking for, okay? Because before, remember, I asked you, when you get a new client opportunity, I want you to look at the lifetime value of the client, right? Total revenue, total profit of that client. But even more important than that, right? And Alex and I were talking about that. I want you to look at the lifetime value of the branch, right? The lifetime value of the branch. I have never seen personally a branch that was worth less than $10 million, okay? With probably at least $4 million of profit. And here's what I find, because sometimes we look at an individual transaction as a smaller transaction. So like I said, maybe the individual transaction was $25,000 and $8,000 worth of profit, and we weren't thrilled by that. It didn't change anybody's life. However, if the branch value is $10 million in revenue and $4 million in profit, and I've never seen anybody sneeze at $4 million in profit, right? And that we're going to take seriously, and I really want you to understand the total value of the branch. Okay, does that make sense, everyone? So I think sometimes transactionally what happens. So also, Alex and I were talking a little bit at the break too about, I seem to be suggesting smaller sales teams, and I'm not so much suggesting smaller sales teams as much as I am very efficient sales teams. Whether you have 2 people or 6 people or 62 people, right? I just want every one of those people, however many you have, to be extraordinarily efficient, right? Where they are bringing in great new business and quarterbacking the account, directing your special teams accordingly to own the business and go out and do that again. And you could be a multi-million-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, you can be as big as you want, but I think we really need to value the branch. Does that make sense, everybody? I think we've also included maybe a sample letter. One of the strategies that I would generally recommend is that every time you add a new customer, right, that you to the branch, that you send some sort of acknowledgement. Now, you could offer a $250 rent credit. You can do that or not, right? I think often just a simple thank you, right? A handwritten thank you note, right? That in and of itself is huge. And I would do that all the way back to the first branch here. All the way back. So if you just got Mark's company, it was an offshoot several generations down the road of that first XYZ introduction. then I would send that letter all the way back to that first branch. Because it also reminds you and it engages and gets you customers from people who are no longer even customers of yours, right? So your past client, they might be out of the business onto something else. They may have moved out of the area, but they might still be referring people to your property or to your business. Right? Their family member may have passed on, like we talked about. That's natural at the end of life. So, but they're still referring back. Right? You have a question, comment?
Just to make sure I'm clear on that. So XYZ, Fred Barbecue, new company.
Yeah.
You sent a thank you letter to new company, Fred Barbecue and XYZ, correct?
Yeah, all the way back. All the way back. Because it reminds them of the significance of the relationship that you have and the significance of what we've built together over time, and that matters, right? And people want to continue to pay back, and a lot of times they think of you fondly, right? And if we're doing this regularly, again, your cost of sales goes down, your loyalty is up. And again, it's not just your special teams or your sales team that needs to be able to do this. It has to be a system inside of your business. Okay? Questions, comments, thoughts so far? Doing okay? All right, cool. We're actually on schedule. So here's where we're going next. So we had sent out a notice to Fred yesterday that we got the secret double probation handouts. Don't hand these out until the exact right time. So this is the time, folks. So I believe I have these semi-evenly distributed. I may have counted wrong somewhere along the line. You guys will figure that out. Make sure everybody gets one. Okay. So
Here,
You got it?
this is different thing.
So here's what we're going to do.
There you go.
I want to start to make this actionable for you inside of your organizations. So it's always fun, in my opinion, to talk about business concepts. Then the meeting ends, and then we have to go to work. And we have to do our best to implement this. So I'm going to try to steer you down the lane of implementation here. And here's where we're going to start. So if you open it up, you'll see inside, which is the client retention matrix that we've built as a structure for you. And inside of that, what I'd like you to do as a starting point is you'll see the categories that we described earlier. If you could just please transfer your scores, okay, from the other sheet that you first filled out to this one right here. Just take a moment and quickly transfer your scores, if you would. And once you've got the scores transferred, what I'll point out first, on the right-hand side, you'll see across the top, this area at the slight angle, what is that, a 25-degree angle? What do we got there? Somebody's an engineer, can figure that out. So, I don't know what that is. So, 45, you think it is? Think it's all right? Is it all right at 45? All right. So what I'd like you to do is write down for your company, what are all the special teams groups that you have in your organization? Okay, you'll see there's a grayed out example, right? There's hints in there. Try to make this as user friendly as possible. So what are all the special teams in your groups? So you might have clinicians and patient directors and administrators. And I want you to use your titles, your groups, your company. And across the top, I want you to write down as many groups as you can think of. Okay, maintenance, delivery, service department, right? Insurance. There's like all these different groups, finance, right? Whatever that group is, write down as many as you can across the top. there, Patricia. I'll come check on you. Oh, you already got them. Oh, you're just faster than everybody.
I try and leave everything blank and then rewatch and then let someone else do it.
Got it.
Yeah, because I'm not the one that's going to actually be implementing
I
it. So
I understand.
me doing it, it
Yeah.
has to be their idea.
Totally get it. Okay. How are we doing?
Front line is not part of the special team, like the leasing agent.
The leasing agents, so they have a role in there, but assistant managers will probably be in there. So leasing agent, managers, maintenance. I'm trying to think of who else we've got worked into. You might have a social group if you got like a social event. There's usually at least a half a dozen different groups. Sometimes there's a dozen. It really just kind of depends on how you're set up. Usually it's at least a half dozen. And then once you've got the groups written down, what I'd like you to do is for the time being, I want you to put a check in the box. So come across on the concept. So if you think that special teams group should be assigned some dedicated pay time, and I've even seen this like with accounting. So my accounting team, while they're processing invoicing, they should spend an hour a week calling customers who pay timely and thanking them for that. Maybe calling people who are on the verge of, like, have just exceeded their time, and call right, a day after, just to let them know, like, hey, they normally pay timely. It might have escaped them. Do we not send you an invoice? Like, so that they know that we're on it. So just thinking about what should that be. And what I want you to do is for each one of the groups, for each one of the concepts, if it applies in your organization, put a check mark in that box. Okay? Put a check mark in that box. My new client onboarding, I definitely need my quality team there, and I need my head clinician. For my quarterly business review, the executive team needs to be involved in the quarterly business reviews, as does sales and service. Right? And just put a check in the box across for each group, for each concept that you think applies for your organization.
And you say for pay time, like your frontline people that answer calls, they're already contracted, do that automatically? Or?
They could be counted in that, or you might want to add them as a separate category. Mm-hmm. Question?
Managers at like a given branch.
Okay.
Definitely on the special team.
Yeah, branch managers? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And maybe they're operational branch managers, but they could be client facing a certain amount, right? Yeah, so that's a good one. Yeah. Anything else? You did. Well, you're in charge of this anyway, so this is like easy. You could have done the whole talk.
Say one more time.
So I'm going across. Yeah, and just so if I've got, who's that first one? Care advisors. Okay. So I want my care advisors. Like, do I want to give them pay time? If I do, put a check. Do I want them at the new client onboarding? If I do, they get a check.
This is actually paying them full time to do something.
No, the pay time is meaning they should have time interfacing directly with the client.
Yeah.
Some sort of intentional dialogue.
Just make sure I'm clear, this is to be, not as is.
To be going forward, right? Here's what I think is important, right? And then give it a check. If I think it's got potential, right? I don't know. I'm going to go on the assumption that only a small percentage of us have this completely nailed, and if you got it all nailed, and then you're going to have to share with me more, and you'll be one of my success stories that I brag about you as I travel. How are we doing? Everybody getting there? Oh, you can. Oh, you're transferring. You're the transfer. Keep it clean. I got you.
Can you talk more about the CXO?
So the CXO, that client experience officer, so their role, I want to think about, do I have that CXO? Clearly they have I assign them some pay time, right? So do I, and as that CXO, they're going to be involved in onboarding, they're going to be involved in QBRs. I might assign them, maybe there's a category of business, right? Maybe the CXO is in those larger clients that are going to get priority, and the come in, come out clients don't get that same level of attention. But the CXO gives me extra insight to things that the rest of my company might not be observing. Okay.
So it's the particular special team in our company who would
Yeah,
be
it's
the
it,
voice of the customer.
who represents the customer back internally to the company. Exactly. Yeah. I've been doing this for chairs at some VCG groups. Yeah, it's been really interesting. Yeah, it's just a different way to think about, like, okay, what resources do I have? Yeah. Yeah? Oh, good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, good.
Well, think it was Robin.
Mm-hmm.
She's responding.
Mm.
We've done it for us since we started.
That's good.
And we're practicing.
Yeah, that's really good. That's what you should be, because that's how it's. Yeah, agreed. No, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, I've been running a chair coaching program for years where it's all we focus on. Yeah, right? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure that's likely to happen. That's going to be the next regime.
Next regime.
Yeah.
There will be another regime.
Yeah, there will. Yeah. Hopefully we're still standing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will be.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, everybody get there? So here's what I want you to do next is, for right now, for today's purposes, I just want you to circle 2 to 3 high priority initiatives for you. 2 to 3 high priority initiatives. I've got to get my head of maintenance, my maintenance team, really in sync with the sales team. I've got to get my quality team at those QBRs so that we can avoid going down the wrong path. Right? My CSRs need to be up to speed and taking on much more of a lead role in the client relationship. So just circle of these checks, of all these boxes that you checked off, I just want you to circle 2 or 3 high priority ones. And then I'm going to run an exercise, and Tom and I are going to circulate a little bit and figure out, and try to help you figure out how to start to initiate this. Okay? Okay. So, everybody got that? Got your 2 or 3? Here's what I want you to do. And Fred, you can help me with this if you like. I'd like you to divide up into groups of 3. If it turns out to 2 or turns out to 4, that's fine, but shoot for about a group of 3, and then I want you to share in your small groups at least one each of the priority initiatives that you see that you would like to get implemented inside of your organization, and how you're thinking about implementing that and what that would mean for your company. Okay? Everybody follow me on that?
Those groups to include your own company people?
However you want to do it. I'm fine with however you want to do it. You want to do a little cross-generating ideas? That's healthy. So you can pick the 3 people you're closest to. If a few of you want to pop into the lobby or take your group outside, Tom and I are going to wander around and come find you. We'll track you down, and let's take about 10 minutes.
Clear the actors.
That's my number 1.
All right, let's bring it back to the group. So, who'd like to share an example inside of their company of a process or a special teams group that you've identified through this discussion that you would like to, you are committed to implementing? Who's got an example? Johnny's got one? I see Johnny's got the look on his face like, I'm going to hear it.
We don't ask customers for referrals.
Interesting.
We have 1.5 million customers.
Wow. 1.5 million customers.
So I'm guessing 1% of that's pretty good business.
Yeah, that's a full-blown company for most people. Yeah, nice.
So we're going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So thanks for the talk.
You're welcome. Good talk. No, but I mean, it's a telling statistic. We have 1.5 million customers. We don't ask for referrals, right? And there's whether you have 1.5 million or you got 1,500, if that conversation is not a part of your culture, because Mark said it earlier, a lot of this is about shifting the company culture. That's a big part of what has to happen here. Give me, who else has got an example of where you're planning to go? Did you have one? You had your hand up?
Oh yeah, sure. It's shocking that in our business we don't do quarterly business reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make that a rock.
Okay, excellent.
When I get back, and so we don't generally have a problem with the retention.
Mm-hmm.
Our clients tend to like us, but
Sure.
I imagine the possibilities of growing a particular account.
Yeah.
And then also in deepening the referral possibilities.
So that's it's an important comment you just made. We don't have a problem with retention, right? So there doesn't have to be a problem with retention inside of your organization for there to be an opportunity, right? I have found that in most companies there is at least 2x the company without adding new customers, without adding any new customers. There's usually twice the size of revenue potential without adding any new customers if I just looked at it the right way. And like I said earlier, the kind of revenue that you get to add on additional revenue is generally much higher margin, much better work, better scheduled work, stuff that you're extraordinarily good at. Those are really huge opportunities. So, excellent, thank you. So you've started to build this. Let me just kind of walk you through like some of what has to happen to make this more actionable. Like I said, usually I find a Vistage meeting, I'm a Vistage member too, talking about business concepts, super fun. Getting them all implemented, oh my God, it's a lot of work, right? And
That's why you guys are here.
yeah.
That's why you podcast.
That's why he podcasts. Fred kills me.
That's why we got it.
Yeah, he figured it out, Daniel.
So here's the journey that you're starting. You'll notice you could give yourself a numerical score for each one of these boxes and carry out this matrix in a more detailed fashion. That is one option for you. Depending on the level of internal systems and sophistication that you feel like you have today, that would be a potential for you. You might just start with the 2 or 3 checks that you circled, and if all you ever did was got really good at those 2 or 3 initiatives, that alone might significantly improve the performance of your company. What we're shooting for when I come back to these scores, I'm trying to generally, so when we're brought in on assignment, our goal is to grow these scores by about 5 to 10 points a quarter. And if you can grow these scores by about 5 to 10 points a quarter, it gives us a very logical, methodical way to go about and say, okay, I started the year at a 34, I ended the year at a 64. I can assure you that has fallen to your bottom line in a real and significant way. Now, getting through the cultural transitions, it's not just implementing the system, but it's getting through some of the cultural transitions and the how-to. So Johnny seems like a smart guy, very thoughtful setup here. He even had the hotel bring us snacks at the mid-morning break. I rarely see that, so thank you for doing that.
You're welcome, but
Yeah.
you've seen the tables about 7 a.m.
Yeah, I know. But you were here at 7 a.m. taking a look at this, right?
He was here.
Yeah.
Helping me.
Yeah. So what's going to happen to get this operational? So Johnny has the idea. Hey, got 1.5 million customers. We should probably ask for referrals. You tell that, and we all go, great idea. You start to tell that to the team. They're like, what are you talking about, Johnny? Because I'm not. That's not really my job. I've never done that before. And then I started to get some of the similar pushback that I got even here in this room, right? This is about as open-minded and as a forward-thinking group as we're going to get. So they're going to have their own anxieties and their own reactions to your ideas. I just want you to be fully prepared to encounter that so that that conversation goes well. I had somebody change the terms of a business relationship with me as I do with my season tickets with the Lakers. And my partner in the tickets is like, we're suing him, I'm calling my attorney. It's like, let me just talk to him, okay? and if he had delivered the message slightly differently, we probably would have been fine. And like I was able to talk my partner off the ledge, and it's like, you don't have to get your attorneys involved just yet. It's nice that you have them, but we really don't need them right now, thank you. Okay. And by the way, do not drag me into a lawsuit unnecessarily. I do not need that. So, so it's how you message some of this is going to be really important. You know, hey, you guys are going to have to get way better at referrals. It's not the messaging. All right, let me tell you a couple things I've added to your new job responsibilities. Is not the messaging. Okay, so just be thoughtful on the messaging. Okay, and then the evolution of this is where once you've got 3 KPIs for every employee inside of your organization that is measured in some way, shape, or form around this, then you'll know you're starting to get the sort of change in your organization, right? So there's a cultural shift, there's the messaging that you give them, and then the third evolution is the KPIs that are attached to that. And as it becomes measured, it becomes implemented, and you will see this all realized, and the payoff will be there, okay? So, does that help? All right. You did all right, huh? I got some work done this morning. Still getting up in the dark, another week or two. Yeah. I'll be glad when it's light out again. So, all right. Here's what I want to do. I want to give you one more chance to kind of take this implementation a little bit further. I'm going to have you open up your folders. And on the left-hand side, you should see a lessons learned sheet. Okay.
For those of you who don't have folders, just keep digging. It's the last page of your copies. For those of you who have copies of that folders.
I'll give you one. Cause here, you can use that one. Okay. Yeah. Not today. Yeah, not time wise. Sorry. Yeah, I can pull that out. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be used. People use it for their KPIs if they get into it. Okay. So you can ask questions about it if you want. So everybody found that? Let's see if I might even have one extra lessons learned. Okay. So on the top section of the lessons learned, or on the upper left-hand corner, I should say, this is the easy part. You're going to put your name. Okay. Everything beyond that has some higher degree of difficulty. I'm going to pull one of these. These are available, this one. So I'm going to grab that out of here. So, and then on the lessons learned sheet, what I want you to think about is going back to the lessons learned sheet, going back to the 10 systems that we covered, right? We went into detail on the new client onboarding, but there was 10 different pieces here that we didn't go into any detail on, or we went limited detail. Out of all those 10 concepts, I want you to think about which of those concepts, if implemented inside of your organization, could have the greatest payback for you as an organization, okay? So out of those initial 10 systems, would that be assigning a pay time responsibility to every special teams group? Would that be about the new client onboarding that we went through in some detail? Maybe it's the QBRs, the quarterly business reviews that we need to do with all of our clients. Maybe it's more clearly defining the handoffs back and forth. Where does sales carry the ball? When do they bring it back to, when do special teams carry it? And when does it kick back? Okay. I just want you to pick one of those 10 concepts that will give you the greatest payback in your organization. What I will give you a minute for that. On the what I will stop doing section, okay, what I will stop doing section, I want you to think about the excuse that you are likely to get from either your people or your customers about why this isn't important or they can't do this. Okay? What's the excuse that you are likely to get from your people or your customers? I'll talk about QBRs, for example. Your people could say, I talk to my customer every week, right? Why do I need to have a 90-day official review? I'm already talking to them all the time, okay? Your customers might say, hey, thanks, we're too busy to meet, right? And we don't really have the time for that. Here's how you'll know you're running great QBRs, is your customers come to you and ask you to run these more frequently. And a client who we instituted the QBR process, it was so successful they asked for a monthly business review, and we've been doing a monthly because they're huge clients. For 2 different of our clients, we actually upped it to monthly at the client's request, right? Not ours. But just think about what excuse are you likely to run into? Is your special teams going to push back and say, listen, I'm already too busy, right? You know, I don't have time to talk to customers, things like that. And once you've identified the excuse, part of the way that you get rid of excuses is you come up with better stories to override and replace the excuse, right? So if the excuse is, I don't have time to have an official sit down every 90 days, I can't possibly do that with every customer, then the new story needs to be, we owe it to our customers to help them understand how to better work with us so that we maintain seamless, easy relationships that aren't hard and aren't difficult, that get you more time back. So I think too many of us, we're treating it's the customer problem, response to a problem. This is more about eliminating problems before they even happen, so that and I'm so on top of my game that I've anticipated every problem and that I've just knocked them out of the way or had clear process to handle the problems. I heard Alex talking in the break too about customers not really appreciating that the caregiver might not have the same kind of new car that they do, so their cars break down more often. So if one of the caregiver's cars breaks down on the way to your house, like what happens and how does that impact us and how do we accommodate for that, right? Just to be able to talk through that, I think sounds important. And then, so I want you to think about the excuse. And then if you want to work through the new story that you need, that might be an issue you process here in terms of how do I give my team a new story? How do I improve the culture of my company where they get really client-centric and they get excited about eliminating problems before they happen and have KPIs attached to that and maybe are rewarded based on the accomplishment of those KPIs, right? Of achieving the goals associated with those KPIs. And then on the what I will start doing section, I want you to pick one special teams group that is going to get your attention to help them improve in some sort of way. There's, like inside of your organization, like a lot of times inside of our family, like, you know, I had 3 kids, I would have had more kids, but it's like I was running out of time to just keep up with the kids that I had. It's like I can only go to so many soccer games, right? And and especially when they started overlapping, that's when you hit true insanity, when you have 3 kids involved in sports all at the same time. And so, but one of those special teams groups of yours probably needs your attention in some way, shape, or form, right? It might need some bit of mentoring that comes from you, right? And you want to think about, like, what's the mentoring that I want to give that special teams group in some way, shape, or form. And then on the bottom box, I'll say a couple things here. Hey, if you thought the program was valuable, if you thought it was something that was meaningful to your organization, maybe you're a member of other associations that look for speakers. Maybe you're part of a national association where they look for speakers to come annually and talk to address customer groups, client groups of any kind, and you want to point us in that direction, we appreciate that. That's always thoughtful and appreciated. That's a referral? Yeah, so. Sorry we don't have the $250 rent deal. So, if you have a question about how this applies in your organization and you want to hear from us, and you put your information down there, we will reach out to you. Right? If you want help just getting feedback on your client retention matrix, and you put the word matrix on top of that box, that will be an indication to us that you want to hear from us and get some feedback from us about the client retention matrix that you've built. If you put down the word matrix on there, you got to attach a phone number in here, probably a phone number and an email, so we know how to get to you. And I promise somebody from our organization, myself or somebody on the team, Tom, we'll reach out to you. We'll walk you through it. Okay. You don't want to hear from us, you don't have to put anything down there. And we'll let Fred.
Some time
Yeah.
to just take people through these pages and tell them what they are.
Sure, on the handouts, no problem. Yeah.
Just
So you understand what they are. Yeah. Okay.
I'm also going to give some extra time to talk about these.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a little, I'm going to take a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Fred's asking some question about the additional handouts. So these are support tools. I use these to help build KPIs, right? And so I start looking at, these are goal setting tools that I could use for each special teams groups, right? And then once I've built out certain KPIs, I figure out, okay, what's a plan that special teams group needs? That's what that next page is for. I might throw it into an Excel spreadsheet. That's what the next page is for. Or I will build it into your CRM, depending on what your CRM is. If I can bake it into that, I'll bake it into that. Or I'll have you do it independent in Excel or some other mechanism. But I will also, along the way, once we've created the KPIs, I'm going to get some sort of visual recognition that exists inside of your organization. So as I tour your companies, I can see the visual recognition of the KPIs, the visual displays of the KPIs that are important to every special teams group inside your company.
I just wanted everybody to understand who's not on Sandler.
Yeah.
That there are people who are on Sandler. They have got, although this is not printed out in hard copy, but they're tracking all of this stuff.
Right.
They know the productivity of all, and the pay time and all of that of everybody in the organization that's involved.
Yeah.
This is printed out in hard copy, but he's not advocating that you live a hard copy life.
Yeah.
People like Chris Jones' system,
Yeah.
it's all sitting inside of.
Yeah, a well thought out
Yeah.
CRM and process.
Right.
And again, until, like I was saying, the stages of getting this implemented, right, is first of all, communicating this in an appropriate way, setting the culture about how we want to interact with our customers. And then the third point that really locks it in is getting some measured KPI for each group, for each of whatever you've prioritized on that client retention matrix, so that they now have a defined set of measurement that lets them know they're either helping you accomplish those tasks or they've not had an impact on those tasks, and then you can coach appropriately to that. Okay? Again, how you communicate that to people is really important, especially in a world where most people feel overwhelmed. Okay? Does that help a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for asking the question. So, and then just so you know, and in terms of if you, whether you decide you want help from us, you don't want help from us, I'll just tell you how we do it, and then I'll tell you what I would recommend you do if you want to do it independently, which is completely fine, right? So if we get brought in to do these, we typically take a 30-day look at your organization, and we try to assess what are all the special teams groups that you have. How could they be impacting your overall sales results in a positive and impactful way? And what's the least path of resistance for each one of those groups? And what support do we need to give them so that they could actually be successful in that endeavor, right? And usually it takes us about 30 days to assess the organization. And then we typically implement that in a 1 or 2 day setting by bringing those teams in or communicating with them remotely. And then we support it quarterly, monthly, weekly, whatever is the right cadence for the right group. If you would choose to do this completely independent of us, which many of you obviously will, I'm going to recommend you assign somebody, you take somebody in your organization, and for 30 days they do nothing else. If you're going to try to ask, this is what will not work. You cannot go to your customer service manager and say, I need you to implement this for me. Because your customer service manager, or whoever that is, has already got a full-time job, probably more than full-time, and it will be they'll make a stab at it, but you'll never get the full operational impact out of it. So you have to take them out of that role for a full 30-day period, and then they need to get a day a month going forward, completely assigned to this and nothing else. Otherwise, it's not going to get implemented the way that you want. Right? In that case, if you assign it to somebody individually and you just want us to coach them along on how they do that, that's fine too. Or you don't want help from us, or you do, we're happy to help however we can. Okay. Other questions? Fred, anything else you want from me? Anything else you want me to cover? I'm going to kind of take them through 1 or 2 final things.
No, that's good. We can
Yeah.
come back. We can come back to this. I think a lot of you who have gone to Chris's website know that he has a whole lot of online training and
Yeah.
videos. Assuming that you have someone to whom you can assign
Mhm.
implementation, a lot of people have found these online trainings to be very helpful.
Yeah.
So Chris listed them here.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you want to put us in the trenches at your places, interviewing your special teams players, we're happy to do that. You want us to shoot you some video content that allows you to do it a little bit more self-service, we will set that up for you, right? You want a little more full service, we'll do it that way. Really, whatever we can do to help, okay? So I felt like we covered some really good ground today, right? You guys had, you contributed a lot. I saw you working. The journey's just started here, right? A lot of you guys have already been working at your company for quite some time. You're Vistage members, so I already think highly of you. I meet you at a Vistage meeting, I already know you got a lot on the ball, right? And this is sort of an evolution in your process. As you go and install this, you get stuck, holler, right? If I could, before I go, if I could collect the white copies from you on those lessons learned sheet, I'm also going to get copies to Fred, so she's in the loop on what you're up to. Because Chris Jennings is about to leave later today, theoretically. I'm going to get on a plane, fly home. Fred's going to be here, and she's going to hunt you down every month for the rest of your lives to make sure that this stuff is getting done. So, or you can escape me or Tom. You can't escape Fred. All right? So if I get the white copies, you just pass those in. By the way, too, if you Vistage sends the members here, hey, what'd you think of the day?
What'd you think of the guy?
Some of you actually go through and do the ratings. Just so you know, personally, I really appreciate you filling those out. If you have any comments of things you thought were helpful, put them in there. Vistage, just so you know, Vistage expects their speakers to get 5s. That's what they expect. So if I come here trying to knock it out of the park and give you the 5. Hopefully we got there today. And if we didn't, talk to me, because if there's something else I need to be doing better, I'll be around for lunch and you tell me what the heck I'm missing. If you feel like you have to memorialize it in writing, go ahead. But last comment is that Vistage, my official title in the Vistage world as a resource speaker. I would say that is a title that Tom and myself and our entire team, we take it seriously. So we really try to be resources for all of you. If you guys are stuck on one of these things and it's giving you fits and you want to try to get a shortcut there, holler, okay? We'll try to show you all the things that we've learned along the way and be there as a resource. Fred, thanks for inviting me back down.
Thank you for coming.
Always a
just
pleasure.
For us.
Yeah.
came just for
I
us.
came just for you guys. Anything, I got such high regard for Fred. Fred wants something, I'm coming down. And it's so great to meet you all. In the meantime, go out, be prosperous, hope you make a lot of money, have a lot of fun doing it. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you for
I'll take care of
processing
those.
these.
Yes, you got it.
Okay,